Chapter 560. Upon closer inspection, this gray cloud resembled the shape of a giant palm pressing down from afar with a terrifying aura. This heretical phenomenon naturally caused a commotion. After all, this was Tianqian Royal City, the largest city in Zhongzhou. There were plenty of experts here, so people reacted immediately. Some experts sent their pet beasts to investigate, but none of them returned. They were shocked to discover that this giant gray cloud hand was not something they could provoke. But many weren't afraid, because this was Tianqian Royal City. Feng Junwu was notified immediately. When he went outside, he looked up at the sky with a solemn expression. Investigate immediately. As the emperor, Feng Junwu only needed to give the order. Rank 4 flying beasts immediately took to the skies. At that moment, the giant hand stopped and a voice came from the sky, echoing throughout Tianqian Royal City. Greetings from the Tao Lords Corpse Taoist, Ghost Taoist, and Merak Taoist. Today we are here for revenge. Those who have nothing to do with this, please leave. Lin Jin, curator, come out and accept your death. His voice was filled with anger, and it resounded throughout the entire Tianqian Royal City like a clap of thunder. Many people's ears buzzed, and many ferocious beasts were intimidated by the 5 elements' energy and prostrated themselves on the ground. Just from this alone, one could tell how powerful the newcomer was. If he wasn't, he wouldn't have dared to cause trouble in Tianqian Royal City. Fortunately, the corpse cultivator and ghost cultivator wouldn't target the Tianqian nation, but they were clearly fearless. Many people had heard of the Tao Lord's disciple. The 6 Beasts Taoist was famous. Insolence! Feng Junwu was infuriated by the arrogant words. No matter who the other party was, whether they were targeting the Tianqian nation or not, they couldn't just come here to cause trouble without warning. Otherwise, Tianqian would lose face. However, at this moment another voice came from the sky. This is only a personal grudge. If we have disturbed the spiral great nation, we apologize in advance. After this, we will pay you a visit and make amends. We will also offer you generous gift. As the voice spoke, the silhouette of a giant beast loomed in the gray clouds. In an instant, the trees in Tianqian City withered and the wells and rivers dried up as if there was a 10-year drought. That's a drought demon zombie. The young eunuch stood beside Feng Junwu with a solemn expression. Obviously, while apologizing, the Ghost Tao and the Corpse Tao were also showing their powers, telling the others not to interfere. Now it all depended on Feng Junwu's choice. He was the emperor of Tianqian, and he was the only one who had the final say in this situation. At this moment, he hesitated. The other party was not an ordinary cat or dog. Just by looking at its power, it was obvious that the other party had a lot of rank 5 beasts. Should Tianqian intervene and get involved? At this moment, a ray of light shot into the sky from the Heavenly Jade Academy's side. There was more than one. At least a dozen streams of light flew up. They were the teachers of the Heavenly Jade Academy, rank 4 beast appraisers. The one leading them was Xu Xiaolu. While others might be afraid of zombies, she viewed them as a formidable foe. No matter who they were, they had come to her territory to cause trouble and seek revenge on Lin Jin. She couldn't just sit back and watch. Feng Junwu looked at them from afar and was stunned for a moment. Then, he said to the people beside him, "Pass down the order. Today the enemy is coming. We will fight with all our strength." That was inevitable. The Heavenly Jade Academy was one of the Heavenly Jade Nation's greatest asset. Now that the Academy had declared war, how could he remain indifferent? At the Emperor's order, another dozen figures flew up from the city. They were all generals in charge of guarding the royal capital. Their strength was extraordinary, and they could easily wipe out an intermediate country no matter where they were. Just then, a fire-feathered beast flew over from afar. The next instant, a woman leaped down from the beast's back. With a wave of her hand, a fire phoenix flew out and hovered in the air. "That's someone from Phoenix Palace," Someone who knew their stuff immediately recognized them. Phoenix Palace. That was also a behemoth. It was said to be the strongest force in the southern state. Even premium countries in the southern state were on equal footing with them. Their status was on par with Daluo Temple of the grassy continent. The people from Phoenix Palace seemed to be looking around. Then, they spotted familiar faces and went over to stand with the people from the Heavenly Jade Academy to fight against the enemy in the sky. Phoenix Palace is here to help. This was what everyone was thinking. Feng Junwu was shocked. One had to know that even he couldn't invite the people from Phoenix Palace. At this moment, he heard someone behind him exclaim, "Zhao Jingyan, why is she here?" Feng Junwu turned around and saw his third son, Feng Ziqian, speaking. "Ziqian, come here." Feng Junwu saw the clues and immediately called Feng Ziqian over. After asking in detail, he found out that his son actually knew Zhao Jingyan. In addition, he also remembered that the great commander of Phoenix Palace seemed to have this name. That person is the great commander of Phoenix Palace? Feng Junwu stared at Feng Ziqian and asked. The latter nodded. Are you two very close? Feng Junwu asked again. Feng Ziqian nodded. Very. How do you know each other? This was Feng Junwu's biggest doubt, but Feng Ziqian didn't dare to speak about it. He kept his mouth shut, but in the end, he was forced to push the blame to the curator. Father, I actually don't understand this either. It was the curator's magic. Why don't you ask him? When Feng Junwu heard this, he understood. The great commander of Phoenix Palace, Zhao Jingyan, had traveled thousands of miles to help. So it was because of the curator. This curator was so impressive. Just then, Lin Jin walked out of the hall. The commotion outside was so loud that it sounded like thunder. No matter how focused he was, he could still hear it. Moreover, Lin Jin had finished reading Daolord's heavenly tome. He had been deep in thought. Lin Jin was now dressed as the curator. After he came out, he looked up at the palm-shaped cloud of death aura in the sky and mumbled to himself, "They're really here. Seems like that zombie is very important to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so angry." The next moment, a cloud appeared beneath Lin Jin's feet and he flew up. Zhao Jingyan was elated to see the curator. She flew over at once and bowed at the curator. Jingyan has been traveling day and night. I finally made it in time. Indeed, she had been rushing all the way. Lin Jin saluted. Thank you for your hard work. Zhao Jingyan nodded and stood behind Lin Jin. Shang'er came over too, along with Xu Xiaolu and the other teachers. Xu Xiaolu looked puzzled as she sized up the curator. Lin Jin didn't dare to look at her, afraid that Xu Xiaolu might notice something amiss. Hence, Lin Jin looked up at the sky and yelled at the cloud of death, Yan Yunxi, how dare you? His voice was authoritative without being angry. Everyone was stunned, wondering who this Yan Yunxi was. But at this moment, above the death cloud, the Dao corpse's face was filled with shock. Even his zombie face revealed an expression at this moment. How does he know my name? The corpse cultivator felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 561. Beside the corpse Dao was a ghostly figure. The ghostly figure's face couldn't be seen clearly, but it exuded an eerie ghostly aura. Its black robe seemed to be woven from black water. From time to time, twisted faces would pop out, emitting ear-piercing ghostly howls. This person was the Ghost Dao of the Six-Path Beast Dao. Ghost Daoist was also shocked. Corpse Daoist, so your real name is Yan Yunxi. Clearly, even the Ghost Dao didn't know about this. That was why the Corpse Dao felt fear. In his memory, the number of people who knew his real name could be counted on one hand, and they should all be dead. No, that's not it. The Corpse Dao suddenly realized. There were indeed many people who knew his real name, but ever since he became the Corpse Dao, he no longer used his previous name. Apart from himself, there was only one person who knew that the Corpse Dao was Yan Yunxi. His master, the Dao Lord. The soul talisman on the Corpse Dao's forehead was glowing. Clearly, He was struggling internally. The person who spoke just now was wearing the iconic Beast King mask. Without a doubt, he was the curator, who had been in the limelight recently. In fact, these days, the corpse Dao had already learned about the curator's arrival in Tianxian Royal City through some informant. Therefore, he went to find the ghost Dao and brought many experts to cause trouble. This time, the corpse Dao was very confident. His and the ghost Dao's strength was enough to make the top countries wary. Although they came to Tianxian Royal City to cause trouble, as long as they said they were here for personal revenge, he believed that Tianxian wouldn't get involved. But who would have thought that after the curator appeared, Tianxian would stand on the other side? Even so, the corpse Dao didn't think much of it. This time, he came prepared. Although he had lost his physical body, he managed to retrieve his zombie pet beast. This pet beast wasn't simple. In terms of combat strength, it was much stronger than his physical body. Moreover, this zombie beast of his had an extraordinary origin. After being nourished by the death aura for hundreds of years, it was now born. In the eyes of the corpse cultivators, it was enough to sweep across the world. This was also why he dared to attack Tianxian Royal City. Tianxian great country, so what? Without the zombie beast, he wasn't afraid. Now, not only did he have the zombie beast, but he also had the ghost Dao to help him. Even if it was Tianxian great country, he would still fight. He had the strength now. However, the curator had revealed his real name, and this had frightened the corpse Dao. He thought to himself, could it be that this curator has some sort of connection with Master? That should be the case. Otherwise, the curator wouldn't have been able to enter Master's hidden realm and take his body away. Thinking of this, corpse Dao understood. Under normal circumstances, when it came to his teacher, corpse Dao would at least be a bit scared. However, at this moment, he made up his mind. Curator, you came just in time. The corpse cultivator revealed himself. At this moment, he was wrapped in a corpse cloth. This was caused by the dragonfire art. However, at this moment, he looked even more terrifying and bizarre. Give me back my body and I will leave immediately. The corpse Dao said word by word. At this, Lin Jin understood. It turned out that the horrifying zombie body was the physical body of this corpse cultivator. No wonder this guy would attack like a madman, and even offend the heavenly spiral great nation. However, now that the grudge had been formed, Lin Jin couldn't possibly return the man's body. Moreover, if the body mutated, it would be best if it was sealed by the demon slayer, never to be seen again. Hence, Lin Jin shook his head. That body of yours is a scourge. I have destroyed it. What? The corpse Dao's lungs were about to explode at this. That was his original body. He had paid a huge price to refine it into a corpse, and only he knew how hard it was to do so. Because of this, he had led a miserable life for the past few hundred years. He had enjoyed nothing and was truly like a walking corpse. Just when he was about to reap the rewards, the other party had destroyed his physical body. Anyone else would be enraged and lose their mind at this moment. I will kill you. Enraged, the corpse Dao attacked without hesitation. Right now, he wanted nothing more than to hack the curator into 1,000 pieces. In an instant, an incomparably terrifying dragon roar rang out from within the gray clouds. Almost at the same time, a gigantic zombie dragon beast appeared. This was the corpse Dao's zombie pet beast. This was the first time Daoist Ghost had seen this zombie dragon beast. He said in shock, This is Daoist Dragon's six-clawed golden dragon. Daoist corpse, how did you get it? The Daoist of Ghost was indeed shocked, but in reality, he already had a guess. Back when his master, the Dao Lord, fell, the six beasts revealed their ambitions and went their separate ways. The strongest among them, the Dragon Dao, disappeared in just a few years and no one knew if he was dead or alive. The Ghost Dao had never understood this, but now, he understood. Back then, the corpse Dao must have plotted against Dragon Dao. Even his six-clawed golden dragon was stolen and refined into a zombie beast. Admittedly, the Corpse Dao's methods were terrifying. The question was, how did the Corpse Dao kill Dragon Dao? No one could figure this out. Back then, Dragon Dao was the strongest among the six beasts and was also the disciple most favored by his master, the Dao Lord. However, Gui Dao gave it a second thought. If it was a fair fight, even 10 Corpse Daoists wouldn't be able to defeat Dao Long. Therefore, the Corpse Dao must have used a sinister trick. Thinking of this, the Ghost Dao sucked in a breath of cold air, feeling a little more fearful of the Corpse Dao. But now, he still had to help the Corpse Dao. The reason was simple. Not only because the two had always been good friends, but also because the Corpse Dao offered him a price he couldn't refuse. Just for this benefit alone, he would do his best to help. What's more, the Corpse Dao actually refined Dao Long's six-clawed golden dragon into a zombie beast. According to the horror of the zombie beast, its strength should be even higher. No wonder the Corpse Dao dared to directly attack Tianxian Royal City. Sure enough, he was fearless. This six-clawed golden dragon zombie beast alone could suppress the strongest guardian beast in Tianxian. With such strength, there was no need to keep a low profile. These thoughts only appeared for a moment. At this moment, the zombie dragon opened its mouth and spat out a green dragon flame. The green dragon flame had never been seen before. At this moment, the dragon flame went straight for the curator below, not caring about its surroundings. After all, Tianxian had declared war, so the Corpse Dao had no reason to be polite. He was going to kill to vent his anger. Not only was he going to kill the curator, but he was also going to kill every single one of his subordinates. Lin Jin was horrified. Who would have thought that the Corpse Dao had a dragon beast? But because he had read Daolord's heavenly book, Lin Jin recognized the zombie dragon at first glance. Daolord's heavenly book said that the Corpse Dao's character is the most unpredictable, but at least he's filial. But now it seems like it was all an act. This person stole his senior's pet beast and refined it into a zombie beast. Just from this alone, I can tell that he's ruthless and will stop at nothing. Lin Jin knew now wasn't the time to let his imagination run wild. His priority now was to figure out how to deal with the incoming green dragon flame. Chapter 562. The green flames were nothing to be scoffed at. Probably a condensation of fire poison, they were even more potent than normal flames. Open the door! Without hesitation or holding back, Lin Jin opened the visitation hall's door behind him. In an instant, Lin Jin could use the door to cast spells. Fire feared water. To extinguish this green fire poison, water was the most suitable choice. However, this dragon flame was too powerful and difficult to extinguish. Fortunately, Lin Jin had the water reservoir armor and Xiao Hua had the yin-yang dharma body. Water was yin. Using the yin-yang dharma's Grim Reaper's power, Lin Jin activated the water reservoir armor and increased the effect of the visitation hall's door. In an instant, a water barrier formed within 1,000 feet around Lin Jin. Not only did it protect him, but it also protected everyone around him. Against this fire-poison dragon flame, Lin Jin chose to play it safe. He would defend first before attacking. The green fire venom dragon flames slammed into the water armor barrier, causing a spray of mist to rise into the sky. Although the fire venom dragon flames were ferocious and domineering, the water armor barrier on the curator's side was just as sturdy. One on the offensive, the other on the defensive. In the end, the fire-poison dragon flame didn't break through the water barrier. Since the water reservoir armor could absorb water spirit energy, it could continuously consume the fire poison. Just then, something flew out from Shang'er's bosom. It instantly transformed into a giant rooster with flaming feathers and a flaming crown. It was Goldie, whom Shang'er had brought back from Maple City. Although Goldie was only at the peak of rank 4, he had a unique bloodline. With Lin Jin's guidance along the way, he could definitely take on a rank 5 without falling behind. Even without Lin Jin's instruction, Goldie was already raring to go. He flew out, enlarged, and opened his mouth to spit. Similarly, a ball of raging flames surged out. Big Yellow's fire was the Golden Crow's fire, which was the fiercest and most young among the many blazing flames. It was no different from the scorching sun's fire. It looked plain and inconspicuous, but in reality, it was extremely overbearing. The Golden Crow's flame arrived in front of the zombie dragon, the corpse Dao, and the others. *T. Corpse was also a beast appraiser and his strength was beyond rank 4. Naturally, he could tell that Goldie was an extremely rare Golden Crow. Unable to withstand the flames, Corpse Dao retreated. The zombie dragon beast rolled on the ground and released a cloud of ashes to resist Big Yellow's Golden Crow flames. The so-called Cloud Consort Dragon, the six-clawed golden dragon, used to be an expert in manipulating clouds and mist. Now that it had been refined into a zombie beast, the clouds it controlled had also turned into some kind of deathly gray cloud, and it had the divine ability of being impervious to water and fire. Goldie's barrage didn't hurt the enemy, but it did solve Lin Jin's problem. Lin Jin put away his water reservoir armor and rose into the air, facing the gray clouds that covered the sky. Behind him, Shang'er, Zhao Jingyan, Xiao Shulu, and the others came over, clearly planning to fight together. In addition to them, Zhong Zifeng and many teachers of the academy were also there. All rank 4 beast appraisers had rank 5 pet beasts. No doubt this was a force to be reckoned with. Not to mention, there were many Heaven Spiral Nations generals eyeing them from afar. How dare you show off your insignificant skills in front of me? The Dao Corpse's voice resounded. He clearly did not intend to stop here. In the next moment, a dozen experts flew out from the ashen clouds. One of them was dressed in black. It was none other than Appraiser Yen who had gone missing earlier. Everyone knew that Appraiser Yen had indeed betrayed them. Among them, Appraiser Yang Ming was the most infuriated. Appraiser Yen, I, Yang Ming, have treated you as a friend yet you schemed to harm me. Today, I will kill you to avenge my family and friends. Appraiser Yang Ming waved his sleeve, and a gust of wind swept out. Then, a multicolored tiger lunged at Appraiser Yen. This multicolored tiger was obviously the one Shang'er brought out from the mountains. It had been following Yang Ming for the past few days. Although they weren't blood-bonded, they were like friends. Appraiser Yang Ming had an extraordinary memory and profound knowledge. Using his skills as a rank 4 beast appraiser, he managed to upgrade this tiger from rank 3 to rank 4. Now, with the help of numerous spells, this tiger was almost as powerful as a rank 5 even though it was only a rank 4 beast appraiser. Appraiser Yang Ming's skills were impressive. Dressed in black, Appraiser Yan's eyes were filled with pity. Appraiser Yang Ming, I have no personal grudge against you. You can only blame yourself for being greedy. I understand your desire to seek revenge, but you're no match for me. With your broken body and inferior tiger, you'll only be sending yourself to your death. Listen to my advice and go back. Clearly, Appraiser Yen didn't think much of Yang Ming. Yang Ming couldn't be bothered to answer. With such a deep grudge between them, there was no need for him to say anything. Using his finger as a sword, he thrust it at Appraiser Yen from a distance. Yang Qi Blade. A burst of energy pierced through the air, traversing over 100 feet in an instant, heading straight for Appraiser Yan's face. Shocked, Appraiser Yen immediately raised his arm to block the attack. There was a cracking sound. Appraiser Yan's metal wrist guard shattered. Not only that, but his wrist was also bleeding. Clearly, the injury wasn't light. This time, Appraiser Yan's face was filled with murderous intent. Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, don't blame me for being merciless. Appraiser Yan's killing intent was roused. Having said that, he controlled his pet beast to pounce on Yang Ming's pet beast and engage Yang Ming's multicolored tiger in battle. Yen, how dare you show your face? With an angry bellow, Appraiser Ouyang from the academy rushed over to assist Appraiser Yang Ming. Clearly, he could tell that Appraiser Yang Ming was having a hard time dealing with Appraiser Yen alone, so he came to help. At the same time, the other experts from the Demonic Appraisal Association were also engaged in battle. This time, both sides had sent out their elite. In terms of numbers, the Academy and Merak still had the upper hand. However, the Demonic Appraisal Association still had a ghost cultivator who had yet to join the fray. Suddenly, the corpse cultivator said, "Junior brother, since you've helped me this time, I won't mistreat you after this is over." He was forcing the ghost cultivator to join the fray. Knowing that he couldn't avoid this, the corpse cultivator nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, he summoned a rank 5 ghost lion to join the fray. The ghost cultivator was incomparably powerful, second only to the corpse cultivator. Alone, he could suppress half of the academy's teachers. If it weren't for Zhong Zifeng, the academy would have suffered a great loss. Below, the generals of Merak were ready to join the fray. Suddenly, the silhouette of a dragon appeared above the ashen clouds. Then, gray clouds descended like a curtain from the sky, separating the battle from the other areas. Like a barrier, it prevented outsiders from entering the fray. It was obvious that the corpse cultivator was well prepared. First, he lured Curator or Lin Jin out and used this technique to isolate them from the outside world. Even if the Merak nation were to declare war, they wouldn't be able to come in anytime soon. The zombie dragon traversed through the clouds, appearing and disappearing before suddenly breaking through the gray clouds to bite Lin Jin. The dragon's gaping maw was filled with razor-sharp teeth. Like a forest of blades from hell, it could even swallow a mountain in one bite, let alone a human. Ninth Heaven Phoenix Dance. Before Lin Jin could make a move, Zhao Jingyan had already made her move. Chapter 563. Truth be told, it wouldn't be a problem if Lin Jin wanted to fight. But if he were to use his best spell and pet beast, people would easily associate him with Lin Jin. After all, Curator and Lin Jin were the same person. Other than the Vulcan Edict, all other spells would leave traces of Lin Jin, especially his pet beast. With Curator's status, he couldn't let him out. Even an idiot would be suspicious if he let Xiao Hua out. Lin Jin could ignore the previous opponents, but this one was clearly out to kill him. While Lin Jin was fretting over this, Zhao Jingyan made her move. As the chief commander of Phoenix Palace, Zhao Jingyan's strength was unquestionable. She was a skilled spellcaster to begin with and had received the legacy of Phoenix Palace. As for her pet beast, it was definitely worthy of being called a divine beast, a rank 5 phoenix that had undergone nirvana. From what Lin Jin could tell, it was only stronger than Xiaohua. At this moment, the phoenix whizzed past and clashed with the zombie dragon. In the blink of an eye, they were locked in a stalemate. Seeing this, Corpse Dao couldn't help but ask, "Phoenix Palace, you're the chief commander of Phoenix Palace, Zhao Jingyan? I have no grudge against Phoenix Palace, so why are you here to help Curator fight me?" Zhao Jingyan was clearly powerful. The dragon and Phoenix were locked in battle. However, Corpse Dao had a bad feeling about this. After all, Curator hadn't made a move yet. Instantly, Corpse Dao's expression darkened. He couldn't help but ask. Zhao Jingyan's answer was simple and direct. Curator's problem is Phoenix Palace's problem. Simply put, Phoenix Palace was completely on Curator's side. Do you think I'm afraid of Phoenix Palace? Seeing how determined Zhao Jingyan was to help, Corpse Dao steeled his resolve. Regular dragons might not be able to deal with Phoenix Palace's phoenix, but this was a 100-year-old zombie dragon. It wasn't even afraid of phoenix fire. Corpse Dao cast an enhancement spell and the zombie dragon's aura of death permeated the air. Sharp bone spikes grew down the dragon's spine, increasing the dragon's strength by another 30%. The phoenix was starting to feel strained. Although Zhao Jingyan was also casting an enhancement spell, Corpse Tao was clearly stronger than her. Curator, since you don't care about the fairer sex, I will kill this woman and her phoenix first, then I will eat you alive. The corpse sneered and moved immediately. However, seeing that Zhao Jingyan was at a disadvantage, Shang'er had already made her move. Not only her, Xu Xiaolu also came forward and attacked the corpse cultivator. Among these three women, one was a human being, one was a spirit painting, and one was a spirit painting. In terms of power, they were all among the most powerful beings in the world. Therefore, when they made their moves, they immediately stopped Corpse Tao's attack. Meanwhile, Lin Jin had become a bystander. Seems like I don't have to do anything, Lin Jin thought as he observed the situation. That was a good thing. With Lin Jin's identity, he could do whatever he wanted and summon Xiao Hua to borrow the power of the Ghost Blood Beast. However, he had to be more cautious when he was disguised as the curator. This also served as a warning to Lin Jin. If he still wanted to use curator's identity to show his face, he had to get his hands on a few spells or pet beasts. Otherwise, it would be easy to deal with the average person, but against someone like Corpse Tao, it would be hard not to expose himself. Spells were easy. After reading Daelord's heavenly book, Lin Jin had memorized a few powerful spells. He only needed to comprehend and cultivate them before he could use them. Pet beasts were easy too. Raising a monster was enough. However, he still had to get through this crisis. Truth be told, Lin Jin thought this corpse cultivator was pretty stupid. Perhaps because of his zombie brain, his mind had become rigid? To think that he was so stupid, or rather, arrogant, that he thought he could kill Lin Jin in Tianxian City. Was this a joke? The people from Tianxian Academy would never agree to this. Not to mention, Xu Xiaolu was here as well. With a wave of Xu Xiaolu's arm, even Emperor Tianxian would have to join the battle. This was something the corpse cultivator didn't understand. Perhaps he knew but was blinded by anger. Perhaps he was fearless because he had the zombie dragon. Alright. Today, I'll let you know what it means to have 3 helpers. Lin Jin flipped his finger and an ink seal appeared on his fingertip. This was Cosmos ink that Lin Jin condensed himself. In terms of usage of Cosmos ink, Lin Jin paled in comparison to Xu Xiaolu. Xu Xiaolu was an expert and had mastered it while Lin Jin was just a beginner. However, it was still possible to teleport food within a short distance. Although the corpse cultivator had used the deathly gray cloud to isolate the area and prevent others from coming in to help, it couldn't stop Cosmos Inc. Suddenly, the door behind Lin Jin opened. In an instant, he saw someone outside and was secretly delighted. He's here. Lin Jin extended his hand and tapped the air. The ink seal was immediately injected into the deathly gray cloud. It pierced through the cloud and stuck itself onto the attendant outside. Before the attendant could react, the Cosmos ink teleported him to Lin Jin's side. Black Tortoise, now that this corpse cultivator has invaded Merak, you can't just sit back and do nothing, Lin Jin said with a smile. Just think of it as doing me a favor. The attendant was stunned at first, but when he got a clear look at his surroundings, he burst into laughter. Curator, you sure have friends all over the world. Not only Senior Shu, but even Phoenix Palace is doing their best to help. Since that's the case, I might as well help you out. A demonic aura emanated from the attendant's body. His demonic aura was different from others. It was the magnificent Zhenjin, and there was a kind of divine Tao aura inside. What was originally the attendant's appearance was now transformed by the demonic aura into a giant tortoise the size of a mountain. This was the Black Tortoise. To Lin Jin, this Black Tortoise was probably half a step into rank 6. Shang'er definitely couldn't compare to him. Even Xu Xiaolu was no match for this Black Tortoise in terms of combat strength. Lin Jin felt that tricking Merak's guardian monster into helping him was much more impressive than if he were to do it himself. He might have been at a disadvantage earlier, but with the Black Tortoise here and the others, the corpse cultivator's chances were slim. Lin Jin had been observing the battle from a distance, so he could see everything clearly. As expected of a monster, Lin Jin was exasperated when he saw the black tortoise suppress the zombie dragon and force the corpse cultivator to retreat. He couldn't help but exclaim inwardly, "Amazing! This was normal. To be able to become Merak's guardian beast and protect Emperor Merak all this time, his status was extraordinary. This monster must have played a huge role in Merak's rise to power. Hence, to a certain extent, the black tortoise represented Merak's strongest combat power. How could the corpse cultivator possibly be a match for it? The outcome of the battle had been decided. No matter how exasperated the corpse cultivator was, he now understood that he had lost the upper hand. He realized that he had miscalculated from the start. He thought that no matter how powerful the curator was, he could still kill the enemy with so many experts. Yet, to his surprise, the curator didn't even need to make a proper move. His friend alone was enough to stop the corpse cultivator. Chapter 564. Not only did he manage to block the attack, but he was also thinking of a way to escape. He had no choice but to run. If this continued, he would perish here as well. "Let's go." As expected of an old monster that had lived for centuries, Corpse Dao immediately turned tail and fled when he sensed that something was amiss. This time, he came fully prepared. Even if he failed, he still had a way out. The gray clouds that filled the sky were his path of retreat. Produced from the zombie dragon's body, these death clouds were extremely overbearing. Any living being that came into contact with them would be sucked dry and corroded. At the moment, the corpse cultivator had calculated the time and was the first to drill into the death cloud, disappearing without leaving a trace. Like a fish in the ocean, he was nowhere to be found. Death clouds lingered around the zombie dragon as well. Having forced out the siege, the zombie dragon dived into the clouds as well. They weren't the only ones. Corpse Dao's voice could be heard, and the experts he brought with him immediately fled into the clouds as well. They all had special artifacts in their hands that protected them from the corrosion of the death cloud. The next moment, the death clouds drifted into the distance and gradually dissipated. Seeing that Zhao Jingyan and Shonger were about to give chase, Lin Jin said, "Come back. Don't chase a cornered enemy." Indeed, there was no need to give chase. Even if they caught up, it would be troublesome if they couldn't break through the death cloud barrier. Truth be told, Corpse Dao and the zombie dragon were truly powerful. If it weren't for the black tortoise, the outcome of the battle might not have been decided so quickly. But no matter what, this crisis had finally been resolved. Corpse Dao didn't manage to reap any benefits, and neither did his subordinate. Lin Jin asked around and found out that many of the Demonic Appraisal Association's members had died this time. However, Appraiser Yen managed to escape. Lin Jin had expected this. Without a doubt, Appraiser Yen was the disciple of Corpse Dao, so he must be quite capable. After all, he was still a rank 4 beast appraiser. How could he be killed that easily? However, it was said that he was injured by Appraiser Yang. Although he didn't get his revenge, at least he managed to collect some interest. Now that the clouds had parted, Lin Jin used his water reservoir armor to forcefully gather the water vapor from the clouds. It could be considered a demonstration of his rain summoning ability, cleansing the city of misfortune and earning him many admiring gazes. The onlookers didn't know that this was the water reservoir armor's divine ability. They thought it was the curator's power and were all shocked. This time, it was all thanks to the black tortoise. Although the black tortoise immediately hid itself after the death cloud dissipated and returned to Emperor Feng Junwa's side, turning back into a harmless and ordinary inner official. Lin Jin descended on his cloud and went over to thank Emperor Sky Jade and the attendant. This time, Yi Chen was helping them. After all, the corpse cultivator had come for him, and Merak and the academy were only affected. Emperor Tianxian laughed heartily. He had already made up his mind to befriend the curator, so of course, he would gladly respond. Feng Junwu's thoughts were simple. The curator was no ordinary person. First, there was the Daluo Temple, and now there was the Phoenix Palace. Both of these superpowers had a close relationship with the curator. To think that the great commander of the Phoenix Palace would come all the way here to help. If time allowed, the curator could even summon the high monks of the Daluo Temple. In this way, Merak could naturally make such an ally. After all, even a behemoth like Merak, with its superior strength in Central Continent, would have its day. When that happened, it would depend on how many people would come to its aid. Befriending the curator was equivalent to befriending the Daluo Temple and the Phoenix Palace. This was a good deal. Hence, Emperor Feng Junwu was more than happy to oblige. I've only heard of the curator's might before, but now that I've seen it for myself, it's truly extraordinary. I think the curator is now on par with the Daolord of yesteryear, Emperor Feng Junwu suddenly said. He was the Emperor of Merak. His words were priceless, and he wasn't just making them up. If word got out, most people in Central Continent would view the curator and the Daolord on the same level. This was a great honor. It was also a gesture of goodwill from Feng Junwu. Your Majesty, you flatter me. I didn't do much earlier. It was all thanks to my friends that we managed to repel the enemy, Lin Jin said in a kind and humble tone. However, this humility could easily be interpreted as a different kind of humility. What came next was the exchange of pleasantries and etiquette. Previously, Lin Jin had only come to borrow the Daolord's heavenly tome. Now that he had read it and after experiencing this battle, their relationship had taken another step forward. Hence, when Feng Junwu said he wanted to treat the curator, Lin Jin didn't decline. Just then, Xu Xiaolu came over. After staring at the masked Lin Jin for a long time, she asked, "Curator, where's your disciple?" She was obviously asking about Lin Jin. Lin Jin already had an answer for this question. No matter who asked, he would just say that it was something he had arranged for him to do. That way, most people wouldn't probe further. However, Xu Xiaolu wasn't one of them. Then what did Lin Jin do? Xu Xiaolu was still as eager to get to the bottom of things as she was. Lin Zhaozhao had a deep understanding of this point. And because of this, Lin Jin knew how to answer Xu Xiaolu. Why don't you ask him when he's back? Having said that, Lin Jin quickly ran off to chat with Feng Junwu. At times like this, chatting with an old man like Feng Junwu was much more relaxing than talking to Xu Xiaolu. Sure enough, the latter didn't pursue the matter. He was probably planning to harass Lin Jin with questions once he returned. But there was nothing he could do about it. He was the one who had sown this bitter fruit, so he would have to taste it sooner or later. Feng Junwu clearly treated the curator as a distinguished guest. Even Zhao Jingyan and Xu Xiaolu from Phoenix Palace were invited to the banquet. This was an unprecedented scene. During the banquet, Feng Junwu naturally asked about the contents of Daolord's heavenly tome. Because it was proven that the curator was probably the only person in this world who could understand it. Lin Jin merely replied that it was the Daolord's autobiography. Of course, there was more to it than that. Besides his autobiography, Daolord's heavenly tome also contained many secrets of this world, including the hidden locations of some treasures and artifacts left behind by the Daolord. This information was like real gold and silver. Of course, Lin Jin couldn't share this with anyone else. Otherwise, why would Lin Jin have spent 2 days and 2 nights reading the contents of his autobiography? He was taking note. Fortunately, he had memorized every single detail and was now waiting for a chance to retrieve them one by one. As for the cultivation manuals and techniques, they were also priceless treasures. But relatively speaking, Lin Jin felt that these things should vary from person to person. For example, the Daolord's strongest technique was a fist technique called Heavenly Flipping Fist. This supernatural skill that was close to a martial arts technique didn't suit Lin Jin. Chapter 565. Lin Jin's main offensive skills now were needle techniques and fire spells. However, it was never a bad idea to learn something new. If he had the time, Lin Jin would pick one of them to practice and make it curator's exclusive skill. Otherwise, he wouldn't know what to do next time he had to pretend to be curator. This was what Lin Jin was thinking. Although he was dying to set off immediately to search for curator's hidden treasures, he knew that he shouldn't be impatient. He had to take things one step at a time. The banquet went smoothly and everyone enjoyed themselves to the fullest. Lin Jin found an opportunity to clink glasses with the black tortoise as a form of thanks. Also, by befriending the black tortoise, Lin Jin could seek its help in the future. It was killing two birds with one stone. While they were still in high spirits, Feng Junwu suggested that curator give a lecture at Tianxian. Xu Xiaolu and Zhong Zifeng immediately agreed to this suggestion. Zhong Zifeng was still manageable, but if Xu Xiaolu were to join in, Lin Jin wouldn't be able to handle it. A lecture. After some thought, Lin Jin nodded in agreement. Truth be told, he had come to Tianxian alone. Other than Master Gu, who led the way at the beginning, he didn't know anyone else. Later on, many people became his friends. The teachers at the academy were kind and friendly, so Lin Jin befriended many of them. The students at the academy were decent people who respected their teachers and respected their teachings. Lin Jin had benefited a lot from his time at the academy. In terms of actual benefits, getting to know Xu Xiaolu and having all the beast specimens in the Beast Appraisal Hall be included in the museum. Lin Jin felt like he owed the man a lot just for these things. In that case, a lecture wasn't a big deal. No matter what the lecture was, Lin Jin had to put some effort into it. After all, Dode was a teacher at the academy. He would hold public lectures on a regular basis and his lectures were practical. But as a curator, his lectures had to be of a higher level. Otherwise, he wouldn't be worthy of this title. Lin Jin agreed to it and finally decided to hold a public lecture at the academy tomorrow morning. Lin Jin didn't really mind. He was now acting as the curator, so there were many things he had to pay attention to. His main concern was to not expose himself. What he didn't expect was that the next morning, Zhong Zifeng from the academy came running over to inform Lin Jin that the lecture venue had been changed. That's fine. Anywhere is fine. Lin Jin didn't mind. Then, he asked curiously, why did you change the location? There are too many people. Zhong Zifeng was honest and told the truth. There were indeed too many people. This was Lin Jin's exclamation upon arriving at the scene. After yesterday's battle, almost everyone in Tianxian Royal City knew about it. After all, the sky was covered by a cloud of ash. At that time, the timid people in the city changed their pants. The curator's name spread like wildfire. After all, the invading enemy had said that the person they wanted to deal with was the curator. Later on, when the enemy was defeated and fled, many people gave the credit to the curator. As a result, there were many more legends about the curator in this world. Those who knew the truth knew that even the top teachers of Tianxian Academy admired and respected the curator. In addition, the teacher of an official rank 4 beast appraiser in the academy was the curator's disciple. Anyway, the curator's public lecture caused a sensation in Tianxian Royal City. Even the commoners who wanted to listen had no access. Even some of the nobles in the city rarely had this opportunity. Due to the overwhelming number of people, the academy decided to hold the lecture in a plaza. The plaza was huge and could easily accommodate several thousand people. Almost all the students in the academy came out, including the instructors and teachers. Since Little Library and Zhong Zifeng were here, how could the others dare to miss out? Tianquan's emperor, Feng Junwu, was here too. He had given Lin Jin enough face. After all, he was the emperor of a country with a high status. One could imagine that now that Feng Junwu was here, which of his sons and grandsons would dare to miss out? Hence, the royal family came in large numbers. Among them, Feng Ziqian was the proudest. The curator is indeed the curator. This lineup is magnificent. Even father is deeply impressed by the curator. Looks like I'm extremely lucky. Feng Ziqian was secretly pleased. By luck, he was referring to the fact that he was able to become a visitor of the visitation hall. As the saying went, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys moonlight first. Every 7 days, Feng Ziqian would have the chance to consult the curator in person. He didn't think much of it before, but now it seemed like this was his good fortune. Ever since he had the curator's help, Feng Ziqian, who used to be the least favored and had the lowest status among the 3 princes, had now become a strong contender for the throne. His relationship with Thousand Island Kingdom's princess, Ruoli, had also heated up. If everything went well, they would be able to pick a date for their wedding. This was obviously a huge help to Feng Ziqian. As a premium country, Thousand Island Kingdom would definitely think of a way to help Feng Ziqian ascend to the throne. Although this was all thanks to appraiser Lin Jin's help, it was all thanks to the curator's influence. When Lin Jin arrived, he was startled by the large crowd below. But since he was wearing a mask, no one could tell what expression he had on. Lin Jin had a feeling that Taoist Lord probably had the same thought when he put on a mask back then. Lin Jin even knew that Taoist Lord was just a Taoist back then, just like Lin Jin. A person couldn't live with a mask forever. He had a more genuine side to him. Just like Lin Jin, on one side was Lin Jin, and on the other side was the curator. Lin Jin was probably the only person in the world who knew about this because such a secret would only be recorded in Taoist Lord's heavenly book. Hence, after reading Taoist Lord's heavenly book, Lin Jin felt that he and the curator were very similar. Not only did they come from the same place, but their experiences were also very similar as well. Lin Jin cleared his mind of all distracting thoughts. What he had to focus on now was his lecture. And this lecture was going to be on a large scale, so Lin Jin had to show some of his true abilities. Otherwise, he would be tarnishing the reputation of the curator. Hence, Lin Jin gave an impressive lecture this time. However, he went from shallow to deep, talking about pet beasts, the intricacies of spells, and cultivation methods. Everyone here was knowledgeable, so they could immediately tell that this lecture was no ordinary lecture. Most students wouldn't be able to understand some of the content, but some of the teaching assistants and teachers were mesmerized by it. The lecture lasted for more than 4 hours and no one left during it. No one spoke either. Other than the soft sound of the wind, the only sound in the plaza was Lin Jin's lecture. When Lin Jin was done, he saluted the crowd and left on a cloud. Many people were still in a daze as they were still immersed in the lecture. By the time they snapped out of it, the curator had already left. Chapter 566. Curator has left? Feng Junwu was stunned. He clearly saw the curator saluting everyone and bidding them farewell. So he must have left. Leaving as he pleased was truly the demeanor of an expert. That was what Feng Junwu said as well. Someone in the crowd grumbled, "It really depends on the person. If you try to act cool without the ability, you'll be dragged away and executed." Hence, different people doing the same thing would result in vastly different outcomes. Many people were clearly reluctant to see the curator leave. Some of them looked lost and most of them were teachers of the academy. They wanted to seek the curator's advice. After all, there were some things that even they didn't understand. What a pity! Zhong Zifeng muttered to himself. Although the curator had left, his legend was destined to be passed down for some time. Lin Jin sneaked back into the house after nightfall. To avoid bumping into anyone else, he even used camouflage. But while he could fool others, he couldn't fool Xu Xiaolu inside Peach Blossom Abode. Xu Xiaolu was waiting for Lin Jin. Upon seeing him, he immediately dragged him into the house. Feeling helpless, Lin Jin mused that he probably wouldn't be able to get a good night's sleep tonight. Sure enough, Xu Xiaolu bombarded him with questions the entire night. Fortunately, Lin Jin was prepared and easily answered all of his questions. In the end, he managed to deal with Xu Xiaolu. Now that Lin Jin was alone, he finally had time to carry out the next step of his plan. He had already achieved both of his goals for coming to Merak. One was to become a rank 4 beast appraiser and the other was to borrow Taoist's divine scroll. With that, there was no need for him to stay in Merak any longer. However, Lin Jin wouldn't leave just yet. Other places might not be safe, so he could cultivate the cultivation method left behind by the Daolord here and improve his strength to the next level. After that, he would go look for some treasures left behind by Taoist Tansun. With this, Lin Jin was confident that he could kill a corpse cultivator the next time he encountered them alone. There were many cultivation methods in Taoist's divine scroll, and Lin Jin knew that some Taoists had never cultivated them before. As the saying went, "Don't bite off more than you can chew." Lin Jin had always adhered to this saying. Strictly speaking, there were quite a number of cultivation methods and skills available, but Lin Jin still felt like there were too many. He decided to only learn one or two and give up on the rest. Only by focusing could one truly improve. Lin Jin's first choice was the 5 elemental armor. This was a defensive divine ability. After using it, the power of the 5 elements would gather around one's body and condense into armor. At the very least, it would be able to block a strike from an immortal. It was said that the reason why the Daolord was able to survive the attack of the immortal devouring beast back then was because of the power of the 5 elements armor. This supernatural power had a total of 5 levels. Back then, Daolord had only cultivated up to the 3rd level. Lin Jin figured that if Daolord could improve this 5 elemental armor a little more, he might not even be injured. It was a must to learn life-saving skills. Other than that, Lin Jin also planned to learn an offensive skill. As the saying went, there were ways to attack and defend. The technique he chose was the Burning Heaven Palm. The name was domineering, and it was indeed an extremely powerful divine ability. It was said that if this divine ability was cultivated to the extreme, one could cover the sky with a palm, burn the heaven and earth, and annihilate all life. This was for the big picture. A smaller one would also be fine. A light palm strike could also be accompanied by a scorching hot palm force. Other than that, this divine ability was also a cultivation technique that could raise one's cultivation level and increase one's spirit energy. Hence, Lin Jin didn't choose a cultivation technique on a whim. He did so after careful consideration. He spent the rest of his time cultivating these 2 divine abilities. Other than his regular lectures and teaching his students, Lin Jin spent the rest of his time cultivating. As a result, Peach Blossom residence became much quieter than before. Shang'er and Goldie had long been sent back by Lin Jin. He also brought back Senior Mo, who had achieved some success in his cultivation. Even Little Library wouldn't disturb Lin Jin at times. She could tell that Lin Jin was cultivating his supernatural abilities. Although she had an eccentric personality, she wasn't someone who couldn't distinguish between priorities. Instead, she would help Lin Jin avoid unnecessary social engagements. Even if it was Emperor Tianxuan's invitation, she would reject it outright. Time passed quickly. 2 months had passed in the blink of an eye. Today was Emperor Tianxuan's birthday banquet. Head steward Yan Quan had personally come to invite Lin Jin. This time, Lin Jin had to attend the banquet. It was also because he had achieved some success in cultivating these 2 divine abilities. While he might not have perfected them, he had at least laid a solid foundation and was now at the beginner level. Lin Jin had cultivated up to the 2nd level of the 5 elemental armor. Of course, he still couldn't compare to the Daolord from back then. However, it was almost impossible for someone like the corpse cultivator to break through his protection. Of the 7 levels of Sky Scorching Palm, Lin Jin had cultivated it up to the 3rd level. This was his current limit. Even his own physique had improved a lot and was much stronger than it was 2 months ago. Lin Jin wouldn't be able to improve any further in the near future, so there wasn't much point in continuing his cultivation. After attending Emperor Tianxuan's birthday banquet, Lin Jin planned to leave. Calculating the time, it had been 3 months since he came to Tianxian Royal City. During the banquet, Lin Jin, Feng Ziqian, and Princess Ruoli sat together, chatting and sipping wine. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, so Lin Jin took the opportunity to bid farewell to everyone. Feng Ziqian already knew that Lin Jin would be leaving, so he wasn't surprised. Emperor Tianxian was just being courteous and said it was a pity that curator wasn't coming. Lin Jin smiled awkwardly. If curator is here, I'll have to be absent. Moreover, curator was in the limelight last time, so it wouldn't be appropriate for him to be here again. So be it. The academy already knew of Lin Jin's 3-month deadline, so they didn't say much. However, both Zhong Zifeng and the teachers were visibly saddened. After all, they had worked together for 3 months and no one knew when they would meet again. Perhaps they would never see each other again. Lin Jin didn't leave immediately. He had to make a trip back to Peach Blossom Abode to pack up his belongings. Inside Peach Blossom Abode, the large carp, white snake, crane, and falcon were completely different from how they were 3 months ago. Although they were at different realms, they were all initiated and possessed monster energy. Among them, the large carp's cultivation was the highest. After all, it had long cultivated its high-grade bone. During the past 3 months, Lin Jin had imparted knowledge to it during his free time, and it had learned the most. Knowing that Lin Jin was leaving, the large carp leaped out of the pond for the first time and bowed while wagging its tail, bidding farewell. Lin Jin quickly sent it back. The 4 of you can come here to cultivate. Although I won't be here anymore, Xu Xiaolu will come back occasionally. Even if she doesn't, you 4 can learn from each other and improve your cultivation. Also, I've left some cultivation manuals in Peach Blossom Abode, so that the large carp can read them to you. Lin Jin instructed. There was one more reason for him to return to Peach Blossom Abode, and that was to bid farewell to Xu Xiaolu. Xu Xiaolu didn't attend Emperor Tianxuan's birthday banquet. She always had her own way of thinking. If Xu Xiaolu wanted to do something, no one could stop her. If she didn't want to do something, begging her was useless. Since this morning, Xu Xiaolu had been avoiding Lin Jin. She didn't want Lin Jin to leave, and Lin Jin could tell that. However, Lin Jin couldn't stay in Tianxian City forever. Moreover, all good things must come to an end. Chapter 567. If Xu Xiaolu wasn't at Peach Blossom Residence, she must be at the Beast Evaluation Pavilion. Hence, Lin Jin headed there. The teachers in the pavilion obviously didn't dare to stop him. Lin Jin made his way up to the 4th floor only to see that the paintings were all shrouded in mist. Xu Xiaolu was clearly throwing a tantrum by sealing the paintings so that even if Lin Jin had Cosmos ink, he wouldn't be able to enter. Lin Jin looked helpless. This was just like Xu Xiaolu's personality. However, Lin Jin knew that with Xu Xiaolu's remarkable abilities, she must be watching him from somewhere. And so, Lin Jin simply bade farewell to her. Xu Xiaolu, all good things must come to an end. Thank you for taking care of me all this while. Lin Jin is eternally grateful. Having said that, Lin Jin bowed to the sealed paintings on the 4th floor. I'm about to embark on a long journey, so I came here to bid you farewell. As a friend, you shouldn't refuse to see me. Having said that, Lin Jin looked around. No response. It was as if he was performing a one-man show. How silly. However, Lin Jin knew that Xu Xiaolu must be listening. All right, if you're not coming out, I'll be leaving. Having said that, Lin Jin looked around again. Still, there was no movement. Left with no choice, Lin Jin pretended to go downstairs. However, even after he left, Xu Xiaolu still didn't show up. Lin Jin sighed. Obviously, this time, Xu Xiaolu was really angry. But this made Lin Jin feel even worse. He knew that if it was any other time, Xu Xiaolu would definitely come out and threaten him to stop him from leaving. But this time, she knew she couldn't stop him, so she didn't show up. After waiting at the entrance for a long time, Lin Jin had no choice but to summon a cloud and fly away. After Lin Jin left, Xu Xiaolu's silhouette appeared outside the beast evaluation pavilion. Her eyes were slightly swollen as she looked up at the black dot in the sky, her fists clenched so tightly that they cracked. Coincidentally, Zhong Zifeng had returned. Upon seeing Xu Xiaolu, he quickly bowed. Without a word, Xu Xiaolu turned to leave. But after taking 2 steps, as if remembering something, she stopped. Xiao Zhong, I'll be staying at Peach Blossom Residence from now on. If you need anything, just look for me there. But for the next few days, no one is allowed to come. Having said that, she disappeared in a flash. Lin Jin could tell that Xu Xiaolu was in a bad mood. Lin Jin felt lost as well. However, he knew that Xu Xiaolu didn't like to be separated by death, so he could understand why she didn't want to come out. Soon, Lin Jin suppressed this thought. Xu Xiaolu was in Merak, and they would meet again in the future. Why should he be sad over this? Lin wasn't heading back to the Jade Dragon Kingdom. There were many things written in the Tao Lord's heavenly book, including the whereabouts of several magic treasures. Magic treasures were something that everyone praised after using. Taking Lin Jin as an example, the immortal binding rope in his hand was incredibly powerful. In crucial moments it could play a crucial role. Just like the time he fought the zombie, it was thanks to the immortal binding rope that he managed to trap the creature inside the painting. Lin Jin knew that he had made quite a few enemies, and that he would inevitably have to face a strong foe in the future, so it was always good to have more useful items. As the #1 expert 500 years ago, and now an immortal, Taoist Lord's Lin Xiaolu's treasures were no small matter. However, after being gravely injured by the rank 9 immortal devouring beast, he knew he didn't have long to live, so he made arrangements for his funeral. Other than a few of his treasures which he passed on to his disciples, the rest were hidden in various secluded places. Some places might be hard to imagine as places with hidden treasures. Back then, Xiaolu was one of Taoist Lord's treasures. However, he didn't pass it on to the insect cultivator. Instead, the insect cultivator somehow found the treasure and took it away. Although this wasn't mentioned in Taoist Lord's Tian book, Lin Jin could deduce it based on the clues he left behind. Lin Jin's next target was an artifact called the 4 Seas Freedom Gourd. According to Taoist Lord's heavenly book, this artifact was obtained from an immortal's ruin. However, Taoist Lord didn't really put it to use. According to Taoist Lord, this artifact didn't suit him. However, after figuring out the 4 Seas Freedom Gourd's function, Lin Jin decided that the first thing he wanted to get his hands on was this artifact. It wasn't suitable for Taoist Lord, but it was definitely suitable for Curator. All this while, Lin Jin had wanted Curator to have some unique skills that stood out from the masses. Flames were Lin Jin's signature skill. Curator had always been using fire, so his skills were rather monotonous. However, if he could get his hands on the 4 Seas Gourd, coupled with the water reservoir armor, it could unleash immense power. Lin Jin was certain of this. According to Taoist Lord's Tian book, the 4 Seas Gourd was located somewhere in northwest Liang State. It was quite a distance away, so Lin Jin immediately headed there. Now that Lin Jin's cultivation level had increased, his spirit energy capacity had exceeded 500 points. He could also regenerate them in an orderly fashion, so traveling on a cloud for long periods of time wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, his speed wouldn't be any slower than riding an eagle. With this, he could just ride on a cloud, and he could even practice his cloud riding skills. 3 days later, Lin Jin arrived at Liang State. Among the many large states in the world, Liang State was considered relatively small. It had many mountains and little water, and the climate was dry, making it uninhabited. Liang State didn't have a premium country or even an intermediate kingdom. However, it did have 7 to 8 small countries. Compared to the other states, Liang State was incomparable. The country was sparsely populated, the mountains were dangerous, and the land was treacherous. Naturally, it became a hiding place for many fugitives, evil experts, and fugitives. It was said that most of the small countries in the Liangzhou region were founded by evil experts and fugitives. Of course, the people living here were not easy to deal with. As the saying went, different environments nurture different people. Anyway, as Lin Jin arrived on a cloud, all he saw was a desolate landscape. In Lin Jin's words, this place wasn't suitable for humans to live in. But this was how nature worked. When a door was closed, a window would always open. Although Liang State was desolate, it was an important transportation route. If one traveled by land, they would have to pass through northern and central states, or even eastern continent to reach southern and grassy continents. Of course, they could choose to take a detour, but the price of taking a detour was too high, and the distance was twice as long. Because of this, Liangzhou was able to support a group of people. Some people stayed here and relied on robbing and collecting tolls to make a living. Moreover, this kind of free life was quite comfortable. The reason why Daolord hid the Four Seas unrestrained gourd in a desolate and dangerous place like Liang State was written in Daolord's heavenly book. Back when Daolord traveled here, he felt that Liang State was dry and desolate due to the lack of rain. Thus, he left the Four Seas unrestrained gourd in a temple and set up a formation. Every few months, the formation would automatically activate, using the Four Seas unrestrained gourd's boundless water to shower Liang State with rain. With this, Daolord naturally hoped that Liang State could become like the other states. With arable land, the people would no longer have to rob others and reap without sowing. These were all things written in Daolord's heavenly book. It was clear that Daolord had good intentions back then. However, reality was completely different from what Daolord imagined. Chapter 568. As far as Lin Jin knew, for the past few centuries, Liangzhou was still the same as it used to be. Nothing had changed. There was no doubt that Taoist Lord's arrangements had gone awry. At the very least, Taoist Lord couldn't fix this. Now that Lin Jin was here, he could find out why Liangzhou was still so desolate and dangerous even after the Four Seas calabash gourd was left behind. The location mentioned in the heavenly book was only a rough estimate. It was said to be at Mount Five Palms in Liangzhou. Lin Jin noticed a small village below him. Intrigued, he descended on a cloud. He planned to ask around. This area was like a desert with only a few oases. This village was built on one of these oases, and it seemed like it had been here for quite some time. There weren't many houses, at most 7 or 8 of them. They were small in scale. After entering, Lin Jin didn't see anyone. The ground was mostly made up of sand and gravel. There was an occasional patch of grass, but most of them were withered. Most of the houses were made of wood mixed with mud and hay. They didn't look sturdy and seemed like they would break at the slightest touch. Just then, an old man came out. At the sight of Lin Jin, his eyes lit up and he strode over. The old man looked to be in his 60s, but he was skinny. His hair was a mess and his clothes hadn't been washed for who knows how long. His hair was unkempt and his face was dirty. As Liangzhou was windy and sandy, the old man's face was covered in a layer of dirt. Just by looking at this old man, Lin Jin could tell that the people of Liangzhou lived a tough life. Lin Jin saluted, but the old man had already walked over. He took out a knife with practiced ease and placed it against Lin Jin's neck. "The fat sheep is here." The old man spoke with a slight Liangzhou accent. It sounded like he was singing a folk song. In the next moment, more than 10 men emerged from the bushes in the dilapidated house. They varied in height and weight, but their clothes were tattered. They looked like beggars. However, these people clearly weren't beggars. Would beggars come here with knives and axes in their hands? Besides these people, there were also a few skinny hounds. They looked like local breeds with large heads and mouths full of sharp teeth. They were quite intimidating. Soon, Lin Jin was surrounded by this group of people. At this moment, there were at least 3 sharp knives pressed against his neck. His stomach and the back of his waist were also pressed against by someone with a dagger. A few dogs came over and sniffed nonstop. Most people would be scared out of their wits if they encountered such a situation. Lin Jin, on the other hand, fared better. Thanks to his cultivation, he was protected by a layer of invisible 5-elemental armor. Average swords and blades couldn't possibly hurt him. Things were getting interesting now. Lin Jin didn't move. Instead, he glanced at the dozen menacing men around him and asked, "Judging by your menacing appearance and attire, if I'm not mistaken, you must be robbers here to rob others?" At this time, a fierce-looking man with a large beard shouted, "What nonsense are you spouting? Consider yourself unlucky today. You actually barged into our ox village. If you know what's good for you, leave all the gold and silver on you, or else." Before he could finish, someone beside him said in a daze, "Boss, I don't think this person is carrying any luggage. I'm afraid he doesn't have any money on him." Am I blind? Annoyed, the boss reprimanded his subordinate before glaring at Lin Jin and saying, "Judging by your extraordinary attire, you must be from a wealthy family. Write a letter and tell your family to bring 500 taels of silver. Once you've paid up, we'll let you go. If you don't have any money, I'm sorry, but we'll have to kill you and make you into stew. It's been a long time since we've had meat." Having said that, he burst into laughter. The other men followed suit. Ah! Lin Jin laughed too. And he laughed even louder. At this, the boss and his men were clearly stunned as they held back their laughter. In the next instant, Lin Jin reached out and grabbed one of the men's axes. With a squeeze of his hand, the axe was instantly shattered. The old axe-wielding man's eyes widened. "Brothers, this is a tough one. Release the dogs." The boss reacted quickly. With a roar, someone whipped out a whistle and blew on it. The whistle was used to control the hound beast. Usually, when a dog whistle was blown, the hound beasts would immediately bite the enemy. But this time, no matter how hard the whistle was blown, the hound beasts seemed to be pressed to the ground by a giant hand. They all lowered their heads and none of them dared to get up. I refused to believe this. The boss raised the axe in his hand and swung it at the hound beast. The northwest wind blew, a little chilly. As the sand flew, the ground was littered with broken axes and blades. Some of them had been twisted beyond recognition. The boss and his men squatted on the ground, trembling as they held their heads in their hands. This posture was taught to them by the old man so they didn't dare to disobey. Ever since they were defeated so easily just now, the great leader and the others were humiliated to realize that they had kicked an iron plate this time. Fortunately, the man didn't kill them. He only made them squat with their heads in their hands and answer his questions. For example, where was this place, which part of Liangzhou it belonged to, or whether they had ever heard of Mount Five Palms. The boss answered whatever was on his mind, not daring to hide anything. They were truly frightened. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if it weren't for the fact that they hadn't drunk water for a long time and couldn't pee, they would have wet their pants by now. The boss and his men were afraid of death too. It wasn't easy to survive in Liangzhou. Therefore, no one who could survive wanted to die. Mount Five Palms was a famous place in Liangzhou. It wasn't because of the beautiful scenery, but because it was the base of the water god cult. Liangzhou was severely short of water, and it just so happened that the water god cult controlled the largest water source in Liangzhou. Anyone who wanted water had to go to the water god cult. Whether it was a small country in Liangzhou or a group of poor commoners like the boss and his men, it was the same. When Lin Jin heard the boss and his men referring to them as poor commoners, he chuckled inwardly. These people sure were thick-skinned. Earlier, they had been acting so menacing, calling themselves bandits and robbers. Now that they had kicked a steel plate, they called them poor commoners. But then again, Lin Jin didn't plan on doing anything to them. These people were just regular people who didn't know any spells or martial arts. Malnourished and lacking water for a long time, they looked no different from refugees. Even their hounds were the most ordinary of people. With Lin Jin's current capabilities, there was no need for him to make things difficult for these commoners. Moreover, these people had been living tough lives. As for Mount Five Palms and the Water God cult, Lin Jin had a plan in mind. The Daelord's divine scroll didn't mention the Water God cult. In other words, the Water God cult only appeared after the Daelord's death. By asking the boss and his men, this speculation was more or less confirmed. In other words, the Water God cult was born in the past few centuries. A few centuries wasn't a short period of time. Based on the current situation, at least in Liangzhou, the Water God cult was undoubtedly the overlord. According to the boss and his men, the Water God cult controlled the water source. More than half of Liangzhou's population had to rely on them to survive. Based on this, one could tell how powerful the Water God cult was. Chapter 569. Coincidentally, the place where Daelord hid the Four Seas gourd was also at Mount Five Palms. The base of Water God Order was also there, so Lin Jin couldn't help but link the two together. Could it be that the Four Seas gourd has been taken by someone else? Lin Jin mumbled to himself as his heart sank. Water God Order was in charge of Liangzhou's water source, and Liangzhou didn't have any water source other than the Four Seas gourd, so there must be a connection between the two. While Lin Jin was deep in thought, the sandstorm grew so strong that it was hard to keep one's eyes open. The Great Head and the others seemed to have realized something as their faces changed drastically, revealing looks of horror. This hero, that yellow-winged monster is coming. Let's hurry up and hide. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid it'll be too late. The great leader said with a long face. Lin Jin snapped out of his daze and scanned his surroundings, noticing the anomaly as well. A strong gust of wind was sweeping up the sand. Although there was wind before, it shouldn't have changed so quickly. Something was clearly wrong. Moreover, there was a distinct demonic aura amidst the sandstorm. Lin Jin knew that a monster was casting a spell, and by the looks of it, the monster's cultivation level wasn't low either. The leader and the others seemed to know what was going on. Lin Jin went over to ask and then cast a small spell. Instantly, an invisible air barrier appeared within a 10-meter radius, preventing the sandstorm from entering. Seeing this, the leader and the others weren't dumb. They knew that they had encountered a true expert. All of them kowtowed at once and answered Lin Jin's questions without reservation. It turned out that their village used to be called Ox Village. Although Liangzhou was a desolate place, with the help of the oasis's water source, the dozen or so families in the village lived a peaceful life. However, humanity in Liangzhou was on the decline and monsters were everywhere. Ox Village used to be able to survive because of the old village chief. The old village chief had some mysterious means to fend off monster invasions. But after the old village chief passed away, Ox Village lost its backer and immediately fell into decline. After all, no one could stop monsters from coming to eat people every now and then. A good village had declined just like that, and they could only rely on robbing to survive. It could be said to be miserable. Lin Jin was puzzled. To put it bluntly, these people were mere mortals. Forget a powerful monster cultivator, even a monster with a few tricks up its sleeve could easily devour them. Under normal circumstances, they shouldn't have been able to survive until now. But in reality, they had really struggled at death's door for such a long time. This was strange. After further questioning, Lin Jin finally understood what was going on. The yellow-winged monster is the most powerful. When it comes, the other monsters don't dare to come. It comes every month, and every time it comes, it must capture a person. In the beginning, there were more than 50 people in our village, but after 2 years, less than half are left. As he spoke, the great head actually started crying. However, in Lin Jin's opinion, the other party was more likely acting. So Liang province is actually this chaotic. Although the Great Head and the others weren't exactly good people, they were just trying to survive. Lin Jin wasn't in a position to judge them. All he could say was that Liang province wasn't peaceful, human lives were worthless, and the ways of the world were unpredictable. However, since they happened to run into each other, if Lin Jin were to leave, someone in this group would surely suffer. Moreover, according to the Great Head, there were more than 20 people in their village, but there were only 11 here. After asking around, Lin Jin found out that there were still some women and children hiding in the nearby cave. As for the elderly, they were the first to be captured. Moreover, they did so willingly to protect the youngsters. Lin Jin could feel the monster energy around him growing thicker. Instead, he purposely suppressed his aura to appear like an ordinary person. Lin Jin didn't want to scare the Yellow Wind monster away. He was curious about how many monsters there were in Liang province. Also, as the curator, he had an idea a long time ago. It was a method to improve his curator's status. However, it was a grand plan. Lin Jin knew very well that it wasn't something that could be accomplished in a short period of time, but he needed to take the first step. The people of Ox Village were pitiful people. Although they had become bandits, they were forced by their circumstances, so Lin Jin didn't blame them for it. The Liangzhou was very big, and there were many places like the Ox Village. If everyone lived in a precarious situation and had to rely on robbing others to survive, then the Liangzhou would truly be like hell on earth. Since he was here to retrieve the Four Seas Freedom Gourd, Lin Jin had to help the Daolord fulfill his dying wish and return peace to Liang province. The wind grew stronger and the yellow sand covered the area. However, neither the wind nor the sand could reach within 10 meters of Lin Jin. The Great Head and the others were dumbfounded at this scene, feeling even more reverent. Just then, a strange laugh came from the yellow sand. Then, a tall figure approached. It was as if he was looking at someone through a layer of blurred glass. The figure walked closer and coldly snorted. "Where did this Jianghu magician come from? You actually dare to play dumb in front of me, Master Huang. You even set up a barrier." Having said that, the figure raised his hand and slammed it against the barrier Lin Jin had set up. It was obvious that the other party was extremely confident. However, this confident slap was met with a series of blows. Smack! With a loud bang, the figure's palm landed on the barrier Lin Jin had set up. As a result, he was repelled and almost fell to the ground. The figure was no fool. He had used more than 80% of his strength in that attack, but he couldn't break this seemingly transparent barrier. This could only mean that the spellcaster was far more capable than him. Hence, after failing his first attack, the figure immediately left. Unfortunately, Lin Jin wouldn't let him. In a flash, Lin Jin was already outside the barrier, blocking the figure's path. The figure's appearance could now be seen clearly. It was a tall and skinny man with a strong physique. However, his beast claws and head made him look more like a beast. Lin Jin had seen similar situations before. It was probably due to a lack of proficiency in transfiguration, or perhaps the transfiguration technique he cultivated was flawed. Needless to say, this was the weasel the leader had been talking about. Judging from the creature's half-human, half-beast facial features, it should be a weasel. It even looked a little silly and adorable. It had a tail behind it that exuded a thick demonic aura. It must have been specially refined into a supernatural power. The monster was startled to be stopped by Lin Jin. But as expected of a monster, its ferocity overrode its rationality. Courting death. With a flick of the weasel's tail, a strong gust of wind whipped up and yellow sand danced in the air. Amidst the gust of wind, Lin Jin could vaguely sense a sharp aura coming from the front. Lin Jin didn't dodge, because it wasn't necessary. He cultivated the 5 elemental armor to improve his defense. While this monster might seem ferocious in terms of rank and strength, it was far inferior to Lin Jin's. Even if Lin Jin stood still, the monster wouldn't be able to break Lin Jin's armor. Sure enough, the moment the weasel's wind blades came into contact with Lin Jin, they shattered instantly. Chapter 570. The monster was horrified. Knowing it was no match for Lin Fan, it scampered away in fear. It wasn't stupid. The 8 slashes from its tail was its strongest attack, yet Lin Fan managed to neutralize it without even lifting a finger. It didn't even leave a scratch on its skin. This only meant that the difference in strength between them was too great. It could only run. Unfortunately, Lin Jin took a step forward and blocked the monster's path again. If I were you, I'd behave myself. You won't be able to escape if you keep running around like this, Lin Jin advised kindly. The yellow weasel understood what was going on and didn't dare to attack again. After all, it had already used all of its strength just now, but the other party didn't even lift a finger to counter it. The other party was much stronger than it, and if it didn't know what was good for it, it would probably end up in a miserable state. The next moment, the wind stopped and the sand fell to the ground. The chief's group hid far away, not daring to approach, but they didn't run away either. One of them wanted to run but was stopped by the chief. When asked why, the chief remained silent and focused on the situation with a glint in his eyes. Facing Lin Jin, the weasel felt immense pressure. Imitating a human, the weasel bowed with both hands clasped before saying, "I am Huang Qi, one of the 72 flag bearers under Black Wind Cave's lord. May I know who you are? Why are you making things difficult for our Black Wind Cave?" It might seem like he was admitting defeat, but it was actually a threat. It meant that he had a backer, so he should be more careful with his words. Unbeknownst to him, Lin Jin was getting more curious. In the past, monsters like Hu Yuzhen from Mount Songliang had always fought alone. Even great monsters like Heavenly Jade's Black Tortoise didn't form a group. It was indeed rare to encounter a group of demon cultivators in the Liang province. Also, according to Huang Qi, there were many monsters in Black Wind Cave. There were cave masters and 72 flag leaders. There were probably even more monsters and small beasts. Lin Jin was delighted. He might be able to broaden his horizons on this trip to Liangzhou. Also, he wanted to record these monsters into the Museum of Deadly Beasts. Also, as Curator didn't have a pet beast, Lin Jin thought of giving Curator a monster-level helper after witnessing the Black Tortoise's ferocity back in Heavenly Jade. This way, Curator would have something to rely on in the future. Of course, monsters were ever-changing and difficult to control, but Lin Jin had other methods. There was a formula for beast food in the feed house. One could use the feed house to prepare a type of demon sealing pill. To Lin Jin, this thing was just like Mount Heaven Maiden's life and death talisman. It was a sinister and overbearing method to control others. Although it was a little cruel, the effect was definitely great. This way, not only would the Curator have a powerful helper, but he could also enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and help get rid of the demons that plagued time. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Over the past few days, Lin Jin had taken the time to concoct several monster sealing pills at the feed mill. After consuming one, the user had to eat it again every 100 days, or else the monster sealing pill would take effect and the user would be in pain for several days, living a life worse than death. Then, the power of the pill would seal the monster's soul, petrifying the user's physical body. From then on, the user wouldn't be able to die even if they wanted to. Instead, they would have to endure endless torture. It was indeed vicious, but to Lin Jin, this method wouldn't be a problem if it was used to deal with monsters that had committed all sorts of evil deeds. In Lin Jin's own words, this was salvation. Making monsters forsake darkness for light was a good deed. At this thought, Lin Jin glanced at Huang Qi. The monster looked like a rank 3 monster who had cultivated his hyoid bone and could speak human language. However, his transformation skills were a mess. His current half-human, half-beast form looked rather odd. Lin Jin walked over and Huang Qi stumbled back in fear. Blood surged from Lin Jin's body as he borrowed the strength of his second blood-contracted pet beast, the ghost blood beast, to reach out and grab Huang Qi's neck. The monster was more than half a head taller than Lin Jin, but with his neck in Lin Jin's grip, he couldn't break free no matter how hard he struggled. "Open your mouth!" Lin Jin tightened his grip and Huang Qi screamed in pain as his mouth was forced open. A monster sealing pill was shoved into his mouth. "Swallow it!" There was a hint of anticipation in Lin Jin's voice. This was his first time using a monster sealing pill. A rank 3 monster had no chance against Lin Jin. After swallowing the monster sealing pill, Lin Jin let go of Huang Qi. The latter looked terrified. What did you feed me?" Without beating around the bush, Lin Jin explained the effects of the monster sealing pill. "Do you understand now? From today onwards your life is mine." Huang Qi's eyes darted around before he turned to run. He clearly didn't believe Lin Jin. Invoking a spell, Lin Jin softly chanted. Huang Qi, who had just taken a few steps, froze and fell to the ground. Unable to move his body, he was in excruciating pain as if thousands of needles were stabbing him. It was a horrifying feeling, but it only took a moment for Huang Qi to calm down. Lin Jin had merely used a specialized spell to activate the monster sealing pill's effect. The actual effect left Lin Jin very satisfied. Of course, the monster sealing pill wasn't perfect. It had its own flaws and weaknesses. However, if Lin Jin didn't say anything, no one would know. After being subdued by the monster sealing pill, Huang Qi dared not resist anymore. After all, he had suffered before and he didn't want to experience that pain a second time. Inside an abandoned wooden house in Ox Village, the chief and the others were tidying up the place while Lin Jin sat by the side, munching on a bunch of grapes. Grapes were a local specialty. Although Liangzhou was dry, there were some fertile oases where the soil was fertile. Due to the climate, the grapes here were extremely fragrant and sweet. Ox Village had quite a few of them, and they were considered the best they could offer. Lin Jin had also seen the women and children the boss had mentioned. They were all emaciated and Lin Jin could no longer bring himself to think about being robbed by this group of robbers. It won't be peaceful around here for the next few days. Find a safe place to hide. Lin Jin had his own plans, but no matter what, fights and killings were inevitable. If the chief and the other commoners stayed behind, they might be dragged into it. Hence, it was for their own good to advise them to leave. The chief nodded and arranged for a few men to take the women and children away. He and a few other strong men stayed behind. They went up to Lin Jin and knelt on the ground. "Sir, we're all uncultured people. We've offended you before, but not only did you not blame us, you even protected us when that yellow wind monster came. We'll never forget your kindness. I think you must be here for something big. Although I'm not talented, I'm willing to lend you a hand." Having said that, he kowtowed. The men beside him also kowtowed in salute. Lin Jin looked at the chief in surprise, musing, "This man is a smart one." Had it been an average person, they would have run as far away as they could without getting involved. But this Niu Pai was clearly more far-sighted. Chapter 571. To an average person, getting involved in this was a dangerous endeavor. But at the same time, great rewards were always accompanied by danger. Because this was an opportunity for Niu Pai and the others. An opportunity to rise above the masses, or at least master some unique skills. Clearly, an axe and cleaver for chopping firewood were far from enough to survive in Liangzhou. After some thought, Lin Jin nodded in agreement. Niu Pai and the others were more familiar with the local situation. Lin Jin's plan was to first subdue the monsters in Black Wind Cave before heading to Mount Five Palms to retrieve the Four Seas Gourd. However, the fact that Water God cult could exist for hundreds of years and even control most of Liangzhou's water source proved that they weren't easy to deal with. Having Niu Pai and the others to help him gather information was bound to be beneficial. Lin Jin wouldn't deny this. After some thought, Lin Jin raised his hand and flicked a few pills to Niu Pai and the others. This is a blood-pact pill I refined. If you have a pet beast with a blood pact, feed it to it. Any pet beast below rank 2 will evolve immediately. Also, if you don't have a pet beast with a blood pact, drip your own blood on this pill if you fancy a wild beast outside. Then, think of a way to feed it to those beasts so you can form a blood pact with them. These were some of the benefits Lin Jin had received in advance. After all, Niu Pai and the others were too weak. No matter how one looked at it, Lin Jin should give them some ability to protect themselves. They didn't have to be too strong, but they had to be stronger than an average person. Otherwise, it would be troublesome for Lin Jin if they died while scouting for information in the future. Niu Pai and the others were overjoyed at this. They quickly took the blood-packed pills with both hands and distributed one to each of them. Go and hide for now. Lin Jin waved his hand and Niu Pai and the others immediately retreated obediently. After settling these trivial matters, Lin Jin summoned Huang Qi over to ask about Black Wind Cave in detail. Black Wind Cave was considered a remarkable place in Liangzhou. It belonged to a major force of monster cultivators. There were many monsters in Liangzhou. Due to the decline of humanity here, monsters naturally had the opportunity to take advantage of it. Hence, there were many monster forces in Liangzhou. Black Wind Cave was at least in the top 3. There were almost 100 monsters in the cave who could transform. The most powerful one was the Black Wind Cave's master. Just below him were the 72 flag leaders. Huang Qi was one of them. The Black Wind Cave's sphere of influence was very large, covering a radius of several hundred miles. They kept the humans within the radius of several hundred miles. When they needed to, they would capture humans and use them as food. Demonic beasts eating humans was nothing new in Liang Province. Just like Ox Village, they were forced to give up one person every month. This was just one village, and there were hundreds of villages of various sizes within a radius of several hundred miles. In this month, 100 to 200 people were sent here as sacrifices. Thankfully, the Black Wind Cave Master knew that he could not eat them all in one go. That was why he took them once a month. The people within a few hundred kilometers were in fact reared by fey beasts. They were no different from livestock. Lin Jin shook his head. It was hard to imagine that Liangzhou's humanity had deteriorated to this extent. This was also because the Liang province did not have a large country to oversee it, and it did not even have an intermediate country. The human race here was like a plate of loose sand, and when they encountered a demon beast, they naturally did not have the slightest ability to resist. By the way, isn't there still the Water God sect? Lin Jin suddenly thought of this and asked Huang Qi about it. The Water God sect is powerful, but they have a good relationship with our Black Wind Cave. Our cave master often visits them as a guest. Huang Qi was much more well-behaved now. It couldn't be helped. Once they met Lin Jin, they couldn't be dishonest even if they wanted to, unless they wanted to die. According to Huang Qi, the Water God sect was indeed Liangzhou's dominant force. They could even be considered a premium country in Liangzhou. Lin Jin listened attentively. Combining what Niu Pai and the others had said, he had a basic understanding of the Water God sect. To put it simply, they were nothing. In any case, Lin Jin didn't have a good impression of the Water God sect. Moreover, he still had to make a trip to Mount Five Palms, so he had to retrieve the Four Seas Freedom Gourd. But before that, Lin Jin planned to recruit the monsters of Black Wind Cave. In the eyes of others, these monsters that looked ferocious and loved to feast on human flesh were like treasures to Lin Jin. Using the monster sealing pill, Lin Jin could control these hundreds of monsters. Once he had them under his control, he could teach them orthodox cultivation technique. In the future, no matter where he went, they would be a formidable force. Lin Jin planned to use these monsters as his curator's defense against enemies. In the future, if they encountered a strong foe, they would be able to shine instead of being a bystander like before. That's not right. When the time comes, I'll still have to rely on bystanders. Lin Jin suddenly thought of this and shook his head. Speaking of which, using the monster sealing pill to control the monsters and then using the museum's demonic cultivation techniques to enhance their strength wasn't something Lin Jin came up with alone. Daelord's divine book had the same idea. Lin Jin felt that great minds thought alike. In this world, ferocious beasts ruled supreme. Back then, Daelord had taken the wrong path. His cultivation had reached the immortal realm, but so what? In the end, didn't he still die of depression after being gravely injured by a rank 9 immortal devouring beast? Hence, Daelord's painting mentioned that Lin Jin had to refine a rank 9 pet beast. Only then could he fight the immortal devouring beast. With predecessors paving the way for him, Lin Jin wouldn't make the same mistake again. This time, Huang Qi revealed everything he knew. For example, according to Black Wind Cave's style of doing things, if he didn't return after the allotted time, Black Wind Cave would send other flag bearers to look for him. These words were meant to instill fear in Lin Jin, but when Lin Jin heard them, an idea popped into his head. This is perfect for wiping out all of Black Wind Cave's monsters in one fell swoop. But if I head there directly, no matter how strong I am, I might not be able to fend off an encirclement of 100 monsters. But if I take them down one by one, it'll be a piece of cake, Lin Jin mumbled to himself. He liked Black Wind Cave's style of doing things. At the sight of this terrifying man's smile, Huang Qi couldn't help but feel uneasy. He mused, is this man really not afraid? If he wants to wait, then let him wait. If Lin Jin didn't return, Black Wind Cave would send at least 3 flag bearers and many monsters. This man was powerful, but he might not be a match for 3 flag bearers. Most importantly, Huang Qi knew where he stood. Among the 72 flag bearers, he was considered a bottom-feeder existence. Hence, he assumed that it was his own fault for being subdued this time. However, the other flag bearers were different. They were truly powerful experts. Hence, although Huang Qi didn't dare to show it on his face, he was secretly looking forward to it, hoping that someone would come and save him. Chapter 572. Lin Jin obviously wouldn't just wait around. There were so many monsters to deal with this time, so it was necessary to be prepared. As the sun set, dusk arrived. Just then, a group of people arrived outside Ox Village. They seemed to be on their way, but they moved like the wind and didn't speak to each other. While it seemed normal, upon closer inspection, one would notice that something was off. Although this group of people looked no different from normal people, they seemed to lack a trace of vitality. Especially when they appeared at dusk, they gave off a strange vibe. The group of people entered Ox Village, obviously looking for something. However, they didn't find anything. They couldn't be blamed for this because Lin Jin had already set up a formation to conceal the situation on his side. Even if that group of people walked right in front of Lin Jin and Huang Qi, they wouldn't notice at all. Huang Qi was also dumbfounded as he watched. Be it the creature or Lin Jin, they both knew that these seemingly ordinary people were actually just poltergeists under the monster's control. These creatures didn't dare to come out when the sun was at its peak and would only come out at dusk. As the saying went, if there were starved ghosts, there must be tiger demons. Lin Jin had encountered something like this before, and it reminded him of Hu Yuzhen from Mount Songliang. He wondered how strong this tigress was, and if she would listen to him and stop eating humans for fun. The group of strange, starved ghosts didn't notice anything. They were now scattered all over Ox Village, each standing still with a glint in their eyes. Then, they shouted in unison, "Welcome, Bloody Wind Flag Master, Flaming Wind Flag Master, and Een Wind Flag Master." This time, the main characters had arrived. Lin Jin perked up. Just as Huang Qi had said, there were 3 flag masters this time. A gust of cold wind blew up ahead and black fog surged. Soon, 3 people walked out. These 3 people all had different appearances, but they were more like humans than Huang Qi. They did not look like half-human half-beast. Just from this, one could tell that the strength of these three people was much stronger than Huang Qi, who was just a dabbler. At least, their transfiguration skills were decent. These three monsters were made up of 2 males and 1 female. One of them had a big head and walked like the wind. His whole body was filled with killing intent. Another man had a head full of red hair like flames. The last woman was feminine. Her clothes were bare, and her face was covered with a thin veil. She had a mysterious and exotic style. More than 10 poltergeist ghosts walked over and knelt down in front of the big-headed man. Reporting to the flagmaster, there is no trace of the yellow-wind flagmaster, nor is there anyone else. A haunt ghost respectfully reported. Strange. At this time, the big head's expression was not good. A pair of gloomy eyes swept around. Although Huang Feng's cultivation is not good, he is at least one of the flag leaders. It is impossible for him to deal with ordinary people. How could he suddenly disappear? As he spoke, the other 2 flagmasters also walked over and looked around. Blood Wind Flagmaster, Ox Village has already been reduced to such a state. Could it be that the people here escaped, so Huang Feng went to other places to catch them? The red-haired man analyzed. That can't be. Even if that's the case, he should have returned long ago. Although Huang Feng isn't much of a threat, he wouldn't dare violate the cave's rules. Something must have happened, the only female monster said. Suddenly, as if she sensed something, she raised her arm. Immediately, more than 10 snakes flew out from her sleeves and slithered around. One of them landed right where Lin Jin was, and the camouflage spell around him rippled. He had been discovered. While Lin Jin was shocked, he didn't hesitate. With a flick of his wrist, several silver needles flew out. Lin Jin's acupuncture skills had now reached an incredible level. Although these 3 monsters were much stronger than Huang Qi, they were still nothing to Lin Jin. With the silver needles flying out, the camouflage spell was broken. The 3 monsters were startled, but they reacted quickly enough. Unfortunately, Lin Jin's needles were even faster. First up was the man with fiery red hair. Just as he was about to spit out a ball of fire, his acupuncture points were pierced by 2 needles. With a wail, he collapsed to the ground, unable to get up. Sensing danger, the brawny man let out a tiger's roar, but it was useless. Then, just like the red-haired man, his acupuncture points were pierced by the needles, rendering him immobile. The remaining Wind Flag Master used several substitute snakes to block the needles. Knowing that he wasn't a match for Lin Jin, he immediately fled. Lin Jin obviously wouldn't let him escape. The oppressive aura of a ferocious beast came crashing down. Although the Wind Flag Master was a rank 4 monster, at Lin Jin's current level, a rank 4 monster was nothing. The needles flew out, and this time, the Wind Flag Master followed in the footsteps of its 2 companions. It was a one-sided slaughter. Huang Qi had witnessed the entire process, and he was trembling in fear. This was too powerful. Any one of the 3 flagmasters, Shuefeng, Huafeng, and Wind, were much stronger than him. Yet, all 3 of them were subdued in just 2 moves. This was unbelievable. Huang Qi was so frightened that he didn't dare to move. This time, he didn't need to use the monster sealing pill because he was truly afraid. Without exception, the same went for the 3 new flag chief. They were fed a monster sealing pill by Lin Jin. At first, they were stubborn and fierce, but after suffering once, they became obedient. Watching the 3 flag masters wail in pain under the control of the monster sealing pill, Huang Qi felt a strange feeling for some reason. There was even a hint of smugness and schadenfreude. It was as if he was saying, "What I've suffered before, you guys should suffer once too." At the same time, this made Huang Qi understand that if he wanted to live, he had to obey this man's orders. His mentality began to change. Lin Jin interrogated the 3 newly captured flag bearers as well. Now that Lin Jin was experienced, he knew that after consuming a monster sealing pill, there was basically no way for them to turn the tables around unless they died. It was just a matter of suffering more or less. In less than 4 hours, the trio became well-behaved. By having Huang Qi explain the rules to them, Lin Jin had the intention of letting Huang Qi take the lead. This naturally gave Huang Qi a sense of belonging. Back in Black Wind Cave, he was the lowest-ranked flag master and was constantly bullied and humiliated. But now, with Lin Jin, he found his strength and the status he deserved. Huang Qi didn't think it was that bad to be under this powerful man. What would Black Wind Cave do next? This was what Lin Jin needed to figure out. Would the other party go all out? If that was the case, he might as well make the first move. However, after Huang Qi's analysis, he suggested Lin Jin wait a little longer. According to the rules of Black Wind Cave, if a flag master fails to return on time, they will send people out to search for him. This matter shouldn't be reported to the cave master. So next time, it's highly likely that some flag masters will come out to search. However, there might be more of them. Huang Qi had already begun to get into his role. This was good. Lin Jin needed someone like Huang Qi who could adapt to circumstances. Chapter 573. At this time, the Wind Flag Master suddenly said, "The cave master is cultivating in seclusion. Today, the one on duty in the cave is the Fierce Wind Flag Master, one of the 3 flag masters. With the Fierce Wind Flag Master's temperament, it will most likely come in person." Lin Jin glanced at the Wind Flag owner, and the latter responded with a flirtatious wink. It was obvious that the Wind Flag Master was an expert when it came to adapting to circumstances. From the beginning until now, he had been very cooperative and could be considered the one who had suffered the least. Lin Jin wasn't naive enough to think that it would simply submit to him. If it wasn't for the monster sealing pill, the situation would have been different. But this was fine too. Lin Jin wanted this type of submission, because in the future, with the monster's cultivation method, using both carrots and sticks, Lin Jin believed that they wouldn't leave even if he chased them away. This was Lin Jin's first attempt, and by the looks of it, the results were pretty good. "Is the Hurricane Flag owner very strong?" Lin Jin suddenly asked. Huang Qi immediately answered, "That's one of the 3 flag leaders of Black Wind Cave. He's the cave master's most capable right-hand man, so of course, he has a high cultivation level and strength." Lin Jin nodded. "All right. Next time, the 4 of you will help me too. This will show me how loyal you are." At this moment, the 4 flag masters were all perturbed. This move had caught them off guard. If they were to attack now, it would be difficult to turn back. But did they have a choice? This time, they waited until midnight. In Liangzhou, the day was scorching hot, but the night was frighteningly cold. Without shelter and firewood to keep warm, an ordinary person would most likely freeze to death if they spent the night in the wild. This was the cruelty of Liangzhou. The chief owner and the others didn't leave. They came here to light a fire and cook. Of course, there wasn't much to eat, just some game. They were lucky. After killing a deer 2 days ago, they still had some leftovers, so they roasted it and ate it. Lin Jin even took some time to check out the hiding place of the Ox Village villagers and made a surprising discovery. Looking at the diamond entrance and the complicated carvings below, Lin Jin's eyebrows twitched. If he wasn't mistaken, there was a ruin down there. It could be a tomb or an ancient cultivator's abode. In Lin Jin's opinion, it was more likely that this was a cave abode. Upon further inspection, Lin Jin's guess was confirmed. This was indeed an ancient cultivator's cave abode, and it was from a long time ago. Who would have thought that the Ox Village people were hiding in was actually a place like this? However, Lin Jin was curious. Usually, a cultivator's cave abode would have some sort of restriction. It wouldn't be surprising if there was a killing array here, but there was none here. Out of curiosity, Lin Jin stepped inside as well. Only then did he realize what was going on. The cultivator who built this cave was a good person. From below, Lin Jin could see everything clearly. The place where Ox Village was located was a spacious stone chamber that could accommodate up to 100 people. There were no restrictions here, and it seemed like it was built specifically for shelter. Elsewhere, there were illusions. To an average person, it might just be a wall, but to Lin Jin, it was an entrance that could lead him to the core of this cave abode. The Liangzhou was a dangerous place. The person who built the Abode of Immortals cave made it a place of refuge out of kindness. At the same time, he was very confident in his own magic. Lin Jin walked over to what looked like a wall to others and stood still to study it. Their boss and the others were confused, but they didn't dare to disturb Lin Jin. Lin Jin reached over. He planned to break this restriction and see if he could go deeper into the cave. But soon, Lin Jin's hand was blocked. Stunned, Lin Jin immediately conjured a ball of flame on his hand. He tried again, but it was blocked again. Amazing! Lin Jin's expression changed. He had borrowed Xiao Hua's strength earlier, and even the rank 5 Fire Wolf's flames were repelled. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this restriction was amazing. I don't believe this. Lin Jin immediately invoked the strength of his second blood contract pet beast. In an instant, the flames on his hand were dyed crimson. Open for me. Lin Jin formed his palm into a claw and reached forward. But he was still forced back. Lin Jin was stunned for a moment before he turned around. Lin Jin clearly knew that this cave abode's owner had such a high cultivation level that even Lin Jin couldn't break the restriction he left behind at full strength. He had no choice but to think about it later. However, this made Lin Jin think of something else. If even 2 of his rank 5 pet beasts couldn't break the restriction, one could only imagine how powerful this place was. The cultivator who laid this restriction was no ordinary cultivator either. If even Lin Jin couldn't break it, it meant that no one else could either. If there was something inside this cave abode, no one else had taken it yet. This was good news. The reason why Ox Village was able to form an oasis and nurture a village was probably related to this cultivator's cave abode. This unexpected discovery delighted Lin Jin. But since he couldn't get in, Lin Jin decided to stop thinking about it. Right now, it was more important to figure out how to subdue the monsters in Black Wind Cave. Just then, Huang Qi came over respectfully and bowed at Lin Jin. I've received news from the Yin Wind that the Cyclone flag owner is here with 15 other flag owners. They'll be here in half a cup of tea's time. Lin Jin's eyes lit up and he nodded. The Yin Wind flag owner, also known as the Snake Monster, was the second to express its loyalty to Lin Jin. Furthermore, it had even recommended itself and was willing to report to the Black Wind Cave on its own accord, luring the other flag masters over. Truth be told, most people wouldn't dare to agree to this. Who knew what this Yin Wind flag owner was thinking? It was possible that this was just an excuse to warn the other flag owners once they got back so that they could launch a full-scale attack and eliminate the enemy. But Lin Jin wasn't afraid. After his previous 2 encounters, he had a rough idea of how strong the monsters in Black Wind Cave were. To be honest, although it was not bad, it was still a far cry from his current state. The strongest of the 72 flag beasts was only a rank 4 demonic beast. Based on this strength, the Black Wind Cave Master was at most a rank 5 demonic beast. It wasn't that Lin Jin was boasting, but even if all the monsters in Black Wind Cave came out and surrounded him, Lin Jin wouldn't be afraid. The only problem was that he might have to fight to the death. Lin Jin didn't think that was necessary. Wouldn't it be better to take them down one by one? Hence, when the Yin Wind Flag Master recommended himself, Lin Jin accepted the invitation. In other words, whether the Yin Wind Flag Master really wanted to prove his loyalty or put on an act to deceive Lin Jin wasn't afraid. There were only 2 possible outcomes. One was a reward and the other was a punishment. It all depended on the Yin Wind Flag owner's choice. Although the monsters in Black Wind Cave were weaker and their cultivation levels were lacking, Lin Jin wasn't afraid. With so many monsters around, Lin Jin could teach them energy cultivation and demonic art. Even if not every one of them could reach Shang'er's level of cultivation, as long as they could get close, they would still be a force that could make their enemies tremble in fear with their numbers. Chapter 574. Furthermore, if they were lucky, one or two of these demonic beasts would have outstanding aptitudes and could reach Shang'er's current level. That would be a huge gain. At that time, this group of demon beasts alone would be able to deal with powerful beings like the Corpse Dao. Just like the big brothers in the underworld, how would they evaluate their strength? Of course, it depended on who had more underlings. Many ants could bite an elephant to death. This was not just a saying. If not for this, Lin Jin would never have dared to impart skills to monsters. But with this item, the monster's life and death could be decided with a single thought, so he didn't have to worry about anything anymore. After summoning Shui Feng and Hu Feng, Lin Jin scanned the three monsters. I have a few poison pills here. Take them and pretend to run away to report back. Then, crush the poison pills among the monsters. Remember, this is a test of your loyalty. If you don't obey or harbor other intentions, don't blame me for being merciless. Lin Jin's expression darkened as he threatened them menacingly. Furthermore, after experiencing the torment of the monster sealing pill, even the most unyielding of them all, the Bloody Wind Flag Master, revealed fear in its eyes. Although there was still a trace of unwillingness, just the thought of having to experience the torment of the monster's sealing pill again was enough to make one break out in a cold sweat. Therefore, even if they were forced, they only had one choice. Now that he was in Lin Jin's hands, he couldn't die even if he wanted to. Right, Huang Qi, since you're so loyal, I'll give you a strength pill. Once you consume it, your strength will multiply. Lin Jin flicked his finger, giving Huang Qi some benefits. The latter was filled with gratitude and excitement. It was like a primary school student who had received a reward from his class teacher. He actually felt a sense of superiority and pride. Huang Qi also gave face and knelt down to express his gratitude. Everything proceeded according to Lin Jin's direction. Go. You've done well. You'll all be rewarded. After saying that, Lin Jin glanced at Huang Qi and said, Next time, I can perfect your shape-shifting technique. You won't have to come out with this half-human, half-beast appearance to scare people. When Huang Qi heard this, his entire body trembled. The art of shape-shifting was its shortcoming. There was no doubt that it wanted to perfect it even in its dreams. However, the competition in the Black Wind Cave was also intense. Don't be fooled by the fact that they usually called each other brothers and seemed to have a very good relationship. In reality, they were all wary of competing with each other, and no one was there to guide it. Now that Lin Jin had perfected Huang Qi's transformation, which was equivalent to fulfilling Huang Qi's long-cherished wish, Huang Qi was naturally grateful and became even more loyal to Lin Jin. Lin Jin waved his hand and the three monsters immediately retreated. As they ran out of the ox village, the three demons all had their own thoughts and did not make a sound. Huang Qi was now determined to follow Lin Jin wholeheartedly. Hence, he had been watching the other two monsters, the Scarlet Wind Flag and Fire Wind Flag, struggle internally. At this moment, the Fire Wind Flag Master could not help but ask, Are we really going to become that person's slaves? It could be seen that it was still somewhat unconvinced and unwilling. The Fiery Wind Flag Master wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he did not say anything. On the other side, Huang Qi said coldly, Why do you have to make it sound so bad? Could it be that you have another choice? Yes, do you have a choice? Huang Qi felt that a wise man submits to circumstances. Since he had no other choice, why make things difficult for himself? Moreover, you won't be able to live a carefree life in Black Wind Cave. You won't even have to rely on others. Other than the title of Flag Master, you won't be able to reap any benefit. If you're not careful, you might even be challenged by the lesser monsters and have your position taken away. Huang Qi said sincerely. These were his words of advice, but they were also his true thoughts and thoughts. Indeed, just as he said, Black Wind Cave was a place where only the fittest survived. It was a brutal and bloody place. The position of Flag Master wasn't fixed. If someone wanted to replace him, they could issue a challenge and the loser would either die or be injured. Truth be told, Huang Qi was always on tenterhooks in Black Wind Cave, afraid that some lesser monster would suddenly rise up and replace him. Meanwhile, Huang Qi saw a glimmer of hope on Lin Jin's side. He obviously wanted to hold on to it. At Huang Qi's words, the Firewind Flag Master fell silent. The pain from the Yao Sealing pill was still fresh in its memory. It was also extremely fearful of the mysterious expert's strength. Although it was unwilling, it didn't dare to go back and tell on the secret. After that, the three Yao did not say anything. Huang Qi had already steeled his heart. He was focused on his bright future. As for the other two Banner Masters, the Bloody Wind Banner Master did not say anything. No one knew what it was thinking. The Fire Wind Banner Master's eyes were filled with struggle and hesitation. Just then, a gust of wind came from the front. A dozen monster cultivators were rushing over. The one leading them was none other than the Wind Flag Master. And behind the Wind Flag Master, there was a muscular man who was over 8 feet tall. This muscular man's upper body was bare, and his muscles were knotted, and his waist was round. It was the Hurricane Flag Master. When the Hurricane Flag Master saw the three monsters, his eyes lit up and he went up to them. Bloody Wind, what's going on? Wind said you guys were captured. It took her a lot of effort to escape and report the situation. How did you guys escape? Hurricane Flag Master's voice boomed like thunder. There were many tiger demons in Black Wind Cave. The Bloody Wind Flag Master was one of them, and so was the Hurricane Flag Master. In terms of strength, the Hurricane Flag Master was definitely one of the top 3 in Black Wind Cave. He was also very considerate of the other tiger demons in the cave, behaving like a big brother. When Bloody Wind, who had been silent the entire time, saw the Hurricane Flag Master, he immediately shouted, "Brother Hurricane, run!" Oh no! Huang Qi and the Wind Flag Master's hearts skipped a beat. In the next instant, both of them took out a poison pill and crushed it without hesitation. In an instant, a cloud of poisonous mist gushed out. In the blink of an eye, it spread over 100 feet, shrouding the monsters within. The Bloody Wind Flag Master held its breath, thinking that it would be fine. However, the poisonous mist was too overbearing. After running 2 steps, it felt the world spinning around it and it collapsed to the ground. The other monsters suffered the same fate. Only the Hurricane Flag Master, who had the strongest physique, struggled for a while before running out of the poisonous mist's range. However, it had inhaled quite a bit of the poisonous mist earlier. After running for less than 100 feet, its body went limp and it collapsed to the ground. Huang Qi and Wind were among those who collapsed to the ground. After all, Lin Jin didn't give them the antidote, so even if he crushed the poison pill, they wouldn't be spared. There were currently dozens of monsters lying on the ground. Some of them were unconscious while a few with higher cultivation levels could still maintain consciousness. However, it was impossible for them to stand up. Soon, Lin Jin rushed over. Throughout the entire process, he had been observing from a hidden spot. He could clearly see who was loyal and who was up to no good. Once he arrived, Lin Jin swept away the poisonous mist with a wave of his sleeve. Admittedly, the poison pills produced by the Museum of Deadly Beasts feed mill were impressive. Even a peak rank 4 monster couldn't resist them. Also, because he had crushed 2 pills at once, the poison was multiplied. But no doubt, these poison pills were good stuff that could decide the outcome of a battle at a crucial moment. Chapter 575. Looking at the monsters on the ground, Lin Jin flicked his needles and saved Huang Qi and the Wind Banner's owner. Judging from the earlier test, these two had indeed sided with him. Although this didn't prove that they wouldn't betray him in the future, they should at least be rewarded for now. Lin Jin's needles could instantly purge the poison from their bodies. After getting up, the two monsters quickly bowed and recounted what happened earlier. Lin Jin nodded. He had seen it too. The Bloody Wind Banner's owner had obviously set a bad example, so he had to be punished. However, the Bloody Wind Banner's owner seemed to have a good personality. Judging from his actions earlier, this monster was a loyal friend. Still, he had to be punished for his wrongdoings. Taking out the monster sealing pill, Lin Jin fed one to each monster on the ground. When it came to the Bloody Wind Banner's owner, Lin Jin was stunned, then overjoyed. He had picked up a treasure. This fierce Gale Flag Master was actually a great demon that cultivated from a rare beast. Although he was only at the peak of the 4th rank, his true strength was already comparable to the 5th rank. That was because the fierce Gale Flag Master's true form was a heaven-soaring tiger. Tigers were ferocious to begin with, and after the soaring sky tiger bloodline was awakened, it could even fly at will and control the winds. It was a pity that it had no one to guide it and had been cultivating on its own. Otherwise, forget using poison pills. Even if Lin Jin were to fight it himself, he would still lose. Lin Jin's face was filled with excitement. Now that he had fed the Bloody Wind Banner's owner the monster sealing pill, he would be able to control the monster's life and death. Lin Jin was eager to see how far this monster could go under his guidance. It would probably be even stronger than Shang'er. Due to the Flag of Cyclones incident, Lin Jin was even more excited. He thought his plan was a great one. It wasn't easy to encounter rare beasts in this world, and it was even rarer to meet one that was talented in cultivation. While Lin Jin had many cultivation methods for monsters, he had only taught Shang'er Little 5 and White 8. Although they were all talented, Lin Jin still didn't think it was enough. If this plan was successful, he would be able to use the beast sealing pill to control many demonic beasts and teach them orthodox cultivation technique. Not only would he be able to cultivate a group of incomparably tyrannical combat strength, but he would also be able to cultivate a few top-level demonic beasts. Lin Jin had fed all the monsters the monster sealing pill. Now, their lives were in Lin Jin's hands. As for whether the creature could break free from the monster sealing pill's control, Lin Jin wasn't worried. The monster sealing pill was a unique pill refined by the museum's feed mill. According to the museum's description, unless Lin Jin helped them break free, no matter how high the monster's rank was, it would never be able to break free from the monster sealing pill's control. With this, Lin Jin could use it with confidence. Looking around, the number of demonic beasts they controlled this time was more than 20. In addition to Huang Qi and the other 3, the total number of demonic beasts they controlled was close to 30. This was already quite a sizable force. Of course, Lin Jin knew that things could happen once or twice, but there wouldn't be a 3rd or 4th time. This time, Black Wind Cave wouldn't be so thick-skinned as to send a small group of monsters to investigate. The next time they came, it would probably be the Black Wind Cave Master leading the remaining 72 banner leaders and the lesser monsters. Although Lin Jin wasn't afraid, there was a more energy-efficient method. Why bother with fighting and killing? Moreover, in Lin Jin's eyes, these monsters had become his personal property. If any of them were to die, he would be the one to suffer the loss. Hence, what Lin Jin had to do next was to take the initiative. Just like how he dealt with the fierce Gale Flag Master's group of demonic beasts, he sent Huang Qi and Feng back, and then directly used the poison pill in the Black Wind Cave. In this way, he could subdue this nest of demonic beasts without fighting. Huang Qi and Feng had done a great job this time. Lin Jin now trusted them. The Hurricane Flag Master and the other monsters would leave them alone for now and lock them up in Ox Village. The matter of going to Black Wind Cave couldn't be delayed any longer. Otherwise, the other party would grow suspicious. Summoning Huang Qi and Yin Feng, Lin Jin explained his plan to them. The two monsters nodded in agreement at once. Now that they were on the ship, they couldn't even get off. They could only continue down this path and do whatever Lin Jin told them to. You two aren't bad. Work hard, and once this is done, you will be handsomely rewarded. Lin Jin wasn't joking. If he said there was going to be a reward, there would definitely be one. After the two monsters accepted his orders and left, Lin Jin invoked a spell to immobilize Hurricane Flagmaster and the other captives with a monster sealing pill. Then, he followed Huang Qi and Yin Feng to Black Wind Cave. Black Wind Cave was a well-known place within a radius of several hundred miles. With the decline of humanity in Liangzhou and monsters running amok, Black Wind Cave was definitely one of the top 3 monster factions. It could be said that other than the overlord of Liangzhou, Water God Cult, Black Wind Cave had never been afraid of anyone and no one dared to provoke them. But this time, something had clearly happened. First, the Yellow Wind Flag Master who went out to collect offerings didn't return. Then, the 3 Flag Masters, Xuefeng, Huafeng, and Yin Feng, who went to look for him, never returned. Something must have happened. Although Black Wind Cave was a place for monsters, there were many rules. Those who went out for business had to return within an hour. Later on, the Hurricane Flag Master who was temporarily in charge of the cave's affairs personally led a team out to search. Only then did the monsters in the cave relax. The Hurricane Flag Master was trustworthy when it came to handling matters. After all, he was the cave master's right-hand man. Not only was he strong, but he was also resourceful and loyal. To make a name for himself in Black Wind Cave, strength alone wasn't enough. He had to maintain a good relationship with all parties and be valued by the cave master. All 3 were indispensable. Hence, for the Hurricane Flag Master to be able to become the cave's manager, he was definitely no ordinary person. There shouldn't be any problems if he personally went out. The other Flag Masters in the cave shared the same thought. With that, they went on with whatever they had to do without worry. But after waiting for more than 2 hours, the Hurricane Flag Master still hadn't returned with his men. By now, some of the monster cultivators had noticed something was wrong. But because it had only been a short while, they didn't do anything. At this time, Huang Qi and the 2 Yin Wind Demons returned to the Black Wind Cave. Admittedly, Lin Jin had thought things through. If he had hesitated any longer, the monsters in Black Wind Cave would have grown suspicious and put their guards up. And now, Huang Qi and Yin Feng had returned at the right time. This is bad, this is bad. Huang Qi was also a drama queen. It stopped for a moment at the entrance of the cave to prepare its expression. Then, it looked at the Yin Wind and nodded. Only then did it show a panicked expression and rushed into the Black Wind Cave. The Flag Masters in charge of guarding the cave entrance hurried over to greet them. What happened? Quick, report to the Cave Master. The Hurricane Flag Master and the others have been captured. The 2 of us fought our way out and only then were we able to escape and report the news, Huang Qi shouted. Chapter 576. Because of the huge commotion, it also alarmed some of the demon cultivators in the depths of the Black Wind Cave. The Yin Wind Flag Master also chimed in. The 2's acting was not perfect, and there were still many flaws, but not everyone could calmly see through them. Especially since the Fierce Wind Flag Master had a special status, he would definitely report this to the Cave Master. In an instant, many demon cultivators in the Black Wind Cave came out from their hiding places, and there were already many layers of people surrounding them. Quiet! At this time, a calm voice was heard. The demons looked and hurriedly lowered their heads and quietened down. This demon cultivator was rather refined, just like a human scholar. He actually had the aura of a scholar. Greetings, Cool Wind Flag Master. Many demon cultivators bowed in a nondescript manner. Usually, demon cultivators would not have so much etiquette when meeting each other, but it was different when meeting the Cool Wind Flag Master. It was said that the Cool Wind Flag Master had once comprehended Tao in a human academy in his early years, and he was very respectful of human etiquette. In addition, the Cool Wind Flag Master's status was higher than the Fierce Wind Flag Master's, and even the Cave Master was polite to him. Therefore, no demon dared to oppose the Cool Wind Flag Master's promotion of human etiquette. In addition, bowing when meeting the Cool Wind Flag Master was a rule that all the demons in the Black Wind Cave knew. What exactly happened? Tell me. The Cool Wind Flag Master was extremely calm, and his eyes were half closed. Clearly, he was calm and intelligent. Seeing the Clear Wind Flag Master, the hearts of Huang Qi and Yin Feng, who were acting, trembled. In the Black Wind Cave, the Cave Master's cultivation and strength were naturally the strongest, but in terms of intelligence, the Cool Wind Flag Master was definitely the most intelligent. They ran back to be spies, not afraid of others, but afraid of meeting the Cool Wind Flag Master. This was because the Cool Wind Flag Master would definitely ask in detail, and sometimes, the flaws were exposed in this kind of question and answer. What was the scariest thing for a spy? It was to fail and be discovered. Therefore, Huang Qi and Yin Feng looked at each other and already had a plan and a decision. Right now, they were in the direction of the cave entrance, which was considered an air inlet. If they released the poison pill here, it would only take a moment for the poison gas to fill the entire Black Wind Cave. Now was the opportunity. The two monsters knew that there was no turning back. Therefore, without hesitation, they crushed the poison pills in their hand. The two subtle sounds made the Clear Wind Flag Master wary. However, no matter how smart the Clear Wind Flag Master was, he couldn't react in time. In the blink of an eye, the poison mist had already spread out dozens of feet. At this moment, the Black Wind Cave was filled with demonic beasts. Almost half of them were shrouded by the poisonous mist. Those with slow reactions and low cultivation didn't even understand what was going on before they felt the world spin around them and fell to the ground. Those with faster reflexes and higher cultivations reacted immediately. However, the poison pills produced by the feed workshop were too overbearing. Just a little bit of it was enough to bring down the demonic beast. Therefore, in just a short while, a large area of the cave entrance had already collapsed. There were some demonic beasts inside that were not affected due to the distance, but they immediately retreated in fear, avoiding the poisonous gas's range. However, Huang Qi and Yin Feng had chosen an air inlet, so the poisonous gas began to quickly spread into the Black Wind Cave. This time, there was another round of chaos. What happened? I can't move. My whole body feels weak. Damn it, it's Huang Feng and Yin Feng. They plotted against us. Shouts, screams, and curses could be heard incessantly. However, none of these could stop the spread of the poisonous gas. Some of the stronger demonic cultivators wanted to cast spells to stir up a gale to blow the poisonous gas away. However, the poisonous gas came too suddenly. Before these demonic beasts could cast their spells, they were already poisoned. Then, they lost all their strength and collapsed to the ground. Moreover, Huang Qi and Yin Feng Flag Master, who had taken the antidote in advance, had quickly retreated to the outside of the cave. Then, they used spells to blow the wind together to speed up the spread of the poisonous gas in the Black Wind Cave. The roars and curses in the Black Wind Cave turned from strong to weak, and finally, there was silence. It's done. Outside the cave, Huang Qi's face was full of excitement and nervousness. After all, for him, this was definitely a challenging job. After all, if he failed, he could imagine the consequences even with his toes. Next to him, Yin Feng Flag Master also had an excited expression, but he was relatively calmer than Huang Qi. It's too early to be happy. Yin Feng Flag Master stared at the entrance of the cave with a vigilant expression. At this moment, there was a sudden strange sound in the cave. Then, a strange wind swept out in the opposite direction, and actually swept out all the poisonous gas that had entered the Black Wind Cave. When the poisonous gas flew out, it was like a black dragon coming out of the sea. It was quite spectacular. However, in the eyes of Huang Qi and Yin Feng Flagmaster, this was not a good thing. Oh no! Huang Qi was so scared that he took a step back. He was the weakest among the 72 flagmasters, and his cultivation was the lowest. At this moment, seeing the plan change, of course, he was extremely frightened. However, he also knew that even if the poisonous gas was blown out, the demonic beasts that had already breathed in the poisonous gas and fallen to the ground would not be able to stand up in a short period of time, let alone fight. Yin Feng Flagmaster, Yellow Wind Flagmaster, you two are so bold. You actually dare to betray and plot against us. From inside the Black Wind Cave came the angry roar of the Cool Wind Flagmaster. Then, a few figures flew out. It was the Cool Wind Flagmaster and a few other flagmasters who had not breathed in the poisonous gas. This time, Huang Qi and Yin Feng Flagmaster were both shocked. They mused, "What's wrong with this Cool Wind Flagmaster? Why hasn't he fallen to the ground?" Regardless of the reason, the current situation was no longer something that Huang Qi and the Yin Feng Flagmaster could handle. Fortunately, Lin Jin appeared at that moment. As the mastermind behind this plan, he would obviously follow along to ensure that it went smoothly. Speaking of which, Huang Qi and Yin Feng Flag had done a great job, so this situation obviously had nothing to do with them. After all, while the poison pill was powerful, it wasn't perfect. There would always be some drawbacks. Also, they couldn't rule out the possibility that the monster might not be afraid of the poisonous gas due to some innate reason. Obviously, this Cool Wind Flagmaster was one of them. Looking at the Cool Wind Flagmaster, Lin Jin had a rough idea of the man's true form. He was quite surprised. However, Lin Jin was now a knowledgeable man who had seen all kinds of strange creatures, so he was only slightly surprised. "You two did a good job," Lin Jin said to Huang Qi and Yin Feng Flag. Lin Jin said to Huang Qi, "Beast taming was a skill, and to be fair, both of them did a great job. Otherwise, it wouldn't just be these few monsters rushing out of Black Wind Cave, but over 100 of them. This meant that they had accomplished their goal. It was normal for some monsters in the Black Wind Cave to be unafraid of the poison pill. The poison pill was effective on living beings with flesh and blood, such as humans and monsters. However, it wouldn't work on monsters. For example, a painting spirit like Little Book Building was neither a human nor a beast. Poison gas couldn't harm a painting. The same principle applied to other monsters. In other words, for the Cool Wind Flagmaster to be able to remain unscathed in the poisonous gas and even blow it out of the cave, it could only mean that this Cool Wind Flagmaster was some kind of monster. As for what kind of monster it was, Lin Jin already had an inkling. Chapter 577. While the man seemed elegant and graceful, he had a sharp aura about him. Like a sheathed sword, humble and gentle when sheathed, unsheathed once unsheathed, its sharpness was unstoppable. In other words, the Flagmaster's true form was probably some sort of sword. He was a gremlin just like Xiao Shu Lu gremlins were rare, especially ones who had cultivated to this level. Lin Jin was naturally curious. However, since it was a spiritual monster, it would be difficult for normal beast pressure to be effective against it. Fortunately, the people behind the Flagmaster were monsters. Fortunately, they weren't affected by the poisonous gas. Lin Jin planned to end this quickly. After all, the Black Wind Cave's master hadn't shown up yet. Based on Lin Jin's estimation, the man was quite powerful, or else he wouldn't have been able to command these 72 Flagmasters. At this, Lin Jin swept a glance at the Flagmaster and the others before saying, "I am Curator's disciple, Lin Jin. Today, I'm here on my master's orders to subdue the monsters and gremlins of Black Wind Cave. Join Curator's Door, and you will receive cultivation methods, embarking on the path of cultivation. Do not resist and obey the will of heaven. What Lin Jin said was complete nonsense. However, there were times when one had to put on an act. Moreover, Lin Jin wasn't wrong. He had already planned to unify the monsters in Black Wind Cave and control them with the monster sealing pill. He was going to teach them the proper cultivation method and even establish a monster sect. When that time came, Lin Jin planned to use Curator's identity as his evangelist. This way, Curator could become the sect's leader and gain even more prestige. Of course, the momentum was just a facade. The most important thing was that this was a group of real demonic cultivators. Moreover, after the signboard was erected, it would naturally attract all the demonic cultivators in the world. At that time, it would truly be a grand event. This was in line with Lin Jin's philosophy. The Flag Master wore a stern expression. But he could tell that Lin Jin wasn't an average person, so he wouldn't attack recklessly. Instead, the monsters behind the Flag Master started cursing in disdain. Lin Jin swept his gaze across them, and an intimidating aura swept over them. The few Yao cultivators were immediately affected. 2 of them were pinned to the ground by an invisible force, unable to get up. A few of them were barely hanging on. Although they wouldn't fall to the ground, it was impossible for them to fight. Only one of them had a high cultivation base and was able to resist the pressure of the ferocious beast. However, his eyes were filled with fear. Clear Wind Flagmaster, be careful. This person is not simple. The beast cultivator warned with a solemn expression. At the same time, the Cool Breeze Flagmaster also made his move. At this moment, it was as if a treasured sword had been unsheathed. Good sword. Lin Jin's eyes lit up and he quickly dodged. At the same time, a gash several feet long was carved into the spot where he had been standing. After dodging the attack, Lin Jin looked up and mumbled, "Sword energy coming from above. What kind of spell is this?" As knowledgeable as he was, Lin Jin couldn't tell what the Flag Master was up to. Then, a few more blade energies came slashing at him. This time, Lin Jin didn't try to dodge. He wanted to defeat his opponent and subdue him. In this case, dodging was completely useless, especially when it came to a treasured sword. The biggest blow was to prove that he could block its sharpness. Activating the 5 elements armor, Lin Jin expanded the armor by 3 feet. Then, he walked toward the Cool Breeze Flagmaster. Courting death. The Flagmaster was enraged. Using his hand as a sword, he swung it at Lin Jin. The next instant, a sharp blade energy descended from the sky and slashed at Lin Jin's 5 elements armor. Crack! Crack! The 5 elemental armor let out a cracking sound, but that was all. The 5 elemental armor Lin Jin was cultivating was considered one of the strongest defensive spells in the Daelord's Heavenly Scroll. Lin Jin had spent several months studying and perfecting it, so even if he had just reached the next level, it was impossible for the Breeze Flag to break it. The Flag Master's expression changed at this. His confidence had clearly suffered a blow. He had always thought of himself as the #1 killer. Even the Black Wind Cave Master couldn't compare to him in this regard. This had also nurtured the Flag Master's arrogant personality. At least in terms of blade energy, he was confident that he was invincible. But today, he had met a tough opponent who could withstand his blade energy. The Flag Master's eyes turned menacing. This time, he thrust his sword forward. With a point of his finger, an invisible blade energy shot out. Even the sharpness of its surroundings tore through the air as it rushed toward Lin Jin. This time, the 5 elemental armor was almost pierced through. But in the end, the 5 elemental armor was more skillful. Or rather, after Lin Jin withstood Flag Master's relentless attacks twice, the 5 elemental armor began to retaliate. With a flick of his finger, silver needles shot out, disrupting the Flag Master's spell casting. Almost at the same time, clouds gathered beneath Lin Jin's feet. Like a swallow, he appeared before the Flag Master in the blink of an eye. The Flag Master was startled. Before he could react, Lin Jin threw a punch at him. He was using another spell he learned from the heavenly tomes, Sky Scorching Palm. This palm landed squarely on the Flag Master's body, causing flames to erupt and the Flag Master to wail in pain. The next instant, Lin Jin used his palm as a claw and grabbed onto something. In an instant, the Flag Master's figure disappeared. After a loud explosion and the flames, the Flag Master was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a sword appeared in Lin Jin's hand. The sword was about 4 feet long. The scabbard was black with a brass buckle, the hilt was blue, and the tip and tail were decorated with brass. Lin Jin reached out and forcefully shoved the reluctant sword back into its scabbard. "Behave yourself." In order to subdue the sword, not only did Lin Jin unleash his full strength, he even opened the visitation hall's door and borrowed the museum's power to suppress the sword. Now, the sword was completely subdued. Perhaps it was intimidated by Lin Jin's power, or perhaps it was forced to do so, but in the end, it could only submit. This process wasn't peaceful at all. When the Clearwind Demon's sword resisted, an ear-piercing sword cry could be heard as sword chi surged forth. However, in the end, the Clearwind Demon's sword was still forcefully suppressed. When it was completely subdued, the Clearwind Demon's sword also became obedient. Lin Jin breathed a sigh of relief. Although it took some effort, the result was good. He tied the sword to his waist, using it as his personal weapon. Seeing how Lin Jin easily subdued the Flag Master, the remaining monsters kept quiet out of fear. Although they were arrogant and hot-tempered, they weren't fools. Even the Flag Master, who was ranked second only to the Black Wind Cave Master, was easily subdued. Even if they were to risk their lives, it would be no different from sending them to their death. Hence, silence was their only option. However, to Lin Jin, silence wasn't enough. He wanted them to submit. He flicked his finger. A few demon sealing pills flew out, and the Flag Masters hurriedly caught them. "Eat them and obey my orders from now on. If you don't, you'll be killed immediately." Lin Jin could sense a domineering aura breaking out of Black Wind Cave, so his tone left no room for negotiation. Chapter 578. Needless to say, that powerful aura belonged to the Black Wind Cave Master. Based on his aura alone, the man was a true rank 5. Even Lin Jin had to treat him seriously. Hence, at a crucial moment like this, he couldn't afford to make any mistake. Forced by Lin Jin's intimidating aura, some of the flag bearers pondered for a moment before swallowing the monster-sealing pill. Some of them looked conflicted and hesitant. Perhaps sensing the Black Wind Cave Master's aura, they looked excited and wanted to stall for time. But Lin Jin wasn't about to give them the chance. Indeed, he was rather lenient towards most demon cultivators, but it wasn't that he didn't care about the situation. Just like now. Since Lin Jin had spoken and the other party refused to listen, they had no choice but to face the consequences. Lin Jin showed no mercy to the monsters who refused to swallow the pill. Just like he said, if they ate the pill, everything would be fine. If they didn't, he would kill them on the spot. Lin Jin attacked. The lightning fire needle in his hand shot out like a bolt of lightning. Before a demonic beast could react, the lightning fire needle pierced through its head, causing it to bleed profusely and die. For real, Lin Jin wouldn't hesitate. These monsters were only rank 4. When they saw Lin Jin taking action, they scattered in all directions. Some of them ran back into Black Wind Cave, screaming for their cave master to save them. Lin Jin immediately released Xiaohua. With the two-pronged attack, it only took a few breaths for the defiant monsters to be slaughtered. After all, they were still a far cry from the rank 5 firewolf beast. Seeing the terrifying rank 5 firewolf, the beasts that chose to swallow the demon's sealing pill all rejoiced. Now that the small threat had been dealt with, Lin Jin was now waiting for Black Wind Cave's master to come out. Depending on the situation, he would subdue it if he could, but if he couldn't, Lin Jin would just eliminate it. At this time, the ground began to shake, especially the Black Wind Tunnel. The Black Wind Cave Master is coming out. Huang Qi mustered up his courage and reminded him from behind. It wasn't just Huang Qi, even the Yin Wind Division's leader wore a fearful expression. Even the breezy bewitching sword that Lin Jin had subdued was vibrating slightly at Lin Jin's waist. Lin Jin knew that to be able to command so many monsters in Black Wind Cave, the cave master must be someone extraordinary. But no matter what, Lin Jin had to get rid of him today. He had no choice but to do it. Even if Lin Jin was willing, Black Wind Cave probably wouldn't agree to it. Rumble. A strong gust of wind blew out of Dark Wind Cavern. Lin Jin frowned. Everything else aside, just this wind manipulation alone was a masterpiece. Just from this alone, one could tell that this Black Wind Cave Master was extraordinary. This was why Lin Jin had to be on his guard. Hoo-hoo! Within the Black Wind Cave, gusts of black wind howled out, forming a whirlwind. The whirlwind gradually expanded, but the force of the wind did not diminish in the slightest. From afar, at least 100 feet of sand and stones were flying as the wind raged. At this time, a tall figure gradually appeared from the black wind. Cave Master is here. Huang Qi's voice was already extremely soft. It was obvious that it was extremely afraid of the Black Wind Cave Master. Lin Jin took a closer look as well, trying to figure out who this Black Wind Cave Master was. In the next moment, a voice came from the figure. Your methods are extraordinary, but I, the Cave Master, do not recognize you. In that case, we have no enmity between us. Even if there is, we should talk about it first. You came straight up and attacked so viciously, slaughtering the demonic cultivators in my cave and forcing them to submit. May I know the reason? The voice was deep and thick. There was no fluster or exasperation. Instead, there was restraint and rationality. This was different from the monsters Lin Jin was familiar with. Most monsters were impulsive by nature. They would start a fight at the slightest disagreement. If the other party had scolded or attacked him right away, Lin Jin would have been able to deal with them easily. But since the other party questioned him first, Lin Jin was caught off guard. After all, strictly speaking, Lin Jin was the one who started the fight. However, this wasn't a problem for Lin Jin. In Liangzhou, humanity is on the decline. Your Black Wind Cave has taken advantage of the situation to rise up, but now you feed humans like livestock. Take Ox Village, 50 miles away for example. Initially, there were at least 100 people in the village, but now less than half of that number remains. You feed on one person every month, and one place spies on 100 villages. The number of innocent civilians who have died in your hands must number in the tens of thousands. As a human cultivator, how could I just sit back and watch? Lin Jin tossed out a reason. Moreover, it was a valid reason. He was enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. This was something that could be justified no matter what. The Black Wind Cave Lord sneered before revealing himself. He was a tall man with a short beard and long hair. His facial features were resolute. Although he looked no different from a human, upon closer inspection, one could see that his face was shaped like a ferocious tiger. His eyes were also filled with anger and ferocity. What a joke! There are so many human countries in each province that eat and kill. There are more than 10 million of them. They are still living beings. Why don't you mention it? The Black Wind Cave Lord asked with a dark expression. Lin Jin didn't know how to answer this question. Humans are the spiritual leaders. That's all there is to it. Although it was only 4 words, his attitude was clear enough. The Black Wind Cave Lord was enraged. Black wind surged around his body and his body expanded. In the blink of an eye, he became half human and half beast. He was more than 30 feet tall and his fingers were like tiger claws. They were long and curved, incomparably sharp. His aura had exceeded Lin Jin's estimation. At least, he wasn't any weaker than Xiaohua. He might even be stronger. Seeing that the Black Wind Cave Lord was about to make a move, Lin Jin observed him carefully. An idea came to him and he suddenly said, "Lu Shofeng, Lord Daoist said that although you're wild, you're well-mannered and respectful. You're also his favorite disciple among the 6 Paths beasts. But to think that you're so unbearable. You've gathered monsters to commit evil and wreak havoc in the world. Did Lord Daoist teach you this?" His last few words were laced with reprimand. As if struck by lightning, the Black Wind Cave Lord who was about to pounce on Lin Jin trembled. His eyes were filled with disbelief. You, how do you know my real name? Who are you?" The Black Wind Cave Lord's voice trembled as he sized up Lin Jin, trying to figure out who he was. Lin Jin mused, "It's done." From the moment the Black Wind Cave Lord appeared, Lin Jin felt that he was extremely similar to Taoist who, one of the 6 Paths beasts described in Lord Daoist's Heavenly Scroll. Coupled with the Black Wind Cave Lord's terrifying cultivation and aura, Lin Jin came up with this guess. He was just testing the waters with his words, but to think he was right. This Black Wind Cave Lord was actually Taoist who. With this, other than Taoist Crane, whose fate was unknown, the other 5 basically knew what was going on. Taoist Insect had died in Lin Jin's hands. Taoist Corpse and Taoist Ghost had become archenemies. Taoist Dragon had fallen and his pet beast, the 5-clawed golden dragon, had been refined into a terrifying zombie dragon by Taoist Corp. And now, he met Taoist Hu in Liangzhou. Admittedly, Lin Jin and that Taoist Lord were truly fated. Chapter 579. There was an introduction to the 6 Paths beasts in Daolord's Divine Scroll, so Lin Jin knew that not all of them were human cultivators. There were also monsters. There were 2 monster cultivators. One was Taoist Tiger and the other was Taoist Crane. Lin Jin was right. Of the 6 beasts Daoist Dragon had the highest cultivation level. However, Daoist Dragon was unlucky and died young. And the one Daolord liked the most was Taoist Tiger. Many people knew that Lin Jin had borrowed Daolord's Divine Scroll in Tianxian City under the name of Curator, so there was no need for him to hide it. After some thought, he told Taoist Tiger, "I, Curator Sure, have borrowed Daolord's Divine Scroll before. I learned about you 6 Paths beasts from Daolord's Divine Scroll," Lin Jin said. Taoist Tiger's murderous aura had receded and he returned to his normal size as he approached Lin Jin. As the saying went, if you can make friends, don't make enemies. Taoist Tiger was the same. What followed was a long conversation. At first, they were wary of each other. After all, no one could trust the other so easily. But as they chatted, they realized they had an unexpected affinity for each other. When they were happy, they could even laugh heartily. From afar, Huang Qi and the Yin Wind Flag Commander were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was going on. How did the 2 who were about to kill each other start chatting as if they were old friends who hadn't seen each other for years? The rebellious flag commanders stood dumbfounded by the side. But no matter what, it seemed like it was a good thing that they didn't start fighting. Lin Jin had always been a carefree person and Taoist Tiger was even more so. They got to know each other through a fight and their initial misunderstanding was cleared up. It turned out that Taoist Tiger really didn't gather monsters to cause trouble. He was ambushed many years ago and was severely injured. Hence, he fled to Liangzhou. This place was deserted and the environment was harsh. It was a good place to hide. Back then, Daoist who had only found a place to hide and recuperate. Who would have thought that there would be so many demon beasts gathered here? Although Daoist who was heavily injured, he wasn't someone ordinary demon beasts could handle. He easily occupied the Black Wind Cave. After that, Daoist Tiger spent most of his time in seclusion to heal his wounds and hide his aura. After a long time, the Black Wind Cave gradually grew in scale, and more demonic beasts came to join them. But then again, Taoist Tiger had never eaten humans before. Tao Monarch had already taught him the cultivation method and the method to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, so Taoist Tiger didn't need to do that. So the demonic beasts in the Black Wind Cave eating humans was something that other demonic beasts did. Of course, Taoist Tiger was aware of this, but he turned a blind eye to it. Lin Jin said with a serious expression, "Let's not talk about the past. I plan to guide the monsters of the Black Wind Cave onto the right path and teach them the way of cultivation so that they can benefit the world." Unexpectedly, Taoist Tiger nodded. "To tell you the truth, this was my plan as well. Back when my master was teaching me, he told me about this grand plan, but he didn't manage to fulfill it. As for me, my old injuries have yet to heal and I've been focused on cultivating in seclusion all these years. I've neglected this matter." Having said that, he added, "Since Mr. Lin's master can read the divine scrolls, you can be considered to have inherited my master's legacy. With this, you and I are of the same lineage. Today is a beautiful day and we're having such a pleasant conversation. Why don't we become sworn brothers so we can help each other out in the future?" Lin Jin was stunned. He mused, "This Taoist Tiger sure is something. His social skills are miles ahead of other Taoists. Speaking of which, they did have a pleasant conversation earlier. It felt like they regretted not meeting each other earlier." Moreover, Lin Jin had told him about Taoist Corpse and Taoist Ghost, and Taoist Tiger shared a common enemy with him. "Back then, I wasn't on good terms with Taoist Corpse and Taoist Ghost. Although they were humans, they were of low character. My master said the same thing back then, but he was merciful and decided to give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. I didn't expect them to become even worse after all these years." Taoist Tiger looked enraged. Especially after learning that Taoist Corpse had cultivated Taoist Dragon's pet beast into a zombie dragon, Taoist Tiger flew into a rage. Among the 6 beasts, Taoist Tiger and Taoist Dragon had the best relationship. Back then, they were inseparable. Later on, Taoist Dragon mysteriously passed away due to an ominous reason. Now, it seemed like Taoist Corpse had something to do with it. Just based on this, Taoist Tiger and Taoist Dragon had a common ground. Since Taoist Tiger was so straightforward, Lin Jin didn't mince his words. So be it in terms of status or strength, Taoist Tiger was top-notch. Also, after interacting with him, Lin Jin liked Taoist Tiger's personality. Taoist Tiger acted on his thoughts and spoke his mind. He was straightforward and didn't have any tricks up his sleeves. Before they knew it, the sky had turned dark as they chatted. "Brother Lin, Liangzhou is a desolate place and the wind is strong at night. Come, let's continue talking inside the cave." Taoist Tiger still hadn't had enough, so he dragged Lin Jin into the cave. Huang Qi, the Wind Flagmaster, and the others had no choice but to follow along. It was awkward to bump into other monsters. Inside the Black Wind Cave, some of the stronger monsters who were knocked out by the poison pills were now standing up on their own. Although they were still a little dizzy, they were fine. Of course, more than half of the monsters still couldn't get up. Dragging Lin Jin inside, Taoist Hu quickly asked, "Brother Lin, what did you do? It's so domineering. Even I felt dizzy when I breathed in that strange poisonous gas." Lin Jin had a new plan in mind. Instead of answering immediately, he performed an acupuncture technique. With a flick of his wrist, hundreds of silver needles flew out and pierced the monsters' acupoints to detoxify them. Moments later, the monsters on the ground got up again with expressions of surprise. "It's just a small trick. It's not worth mentioning." Lin Jin chuckled dryly. Taoist Tiger didn't probe further. After giving his subordinates some instructions, he brought Lin Jin into a cave abode he had opened up himself. Lin Jin nodded profusely after taking a look inside. Taoist Tiger's cave abode wasn't bad. It was clearly augmented with a secret technique of heaven and earth. There was even a spirit-gathering formation set up inside. It was obvious that this was an orthodox cultivation method. Taoist Tiger brought over some aged wine and chatted with Lin Jin. There were probably only a handful of people who could chat with Taoist Tiger, or maybe none at all. Hence, Taoist Tiger couldn't stop talking this time. Lin Jin didn't find it boring. Taoist Tiger's stories were interesting too. When he mentioned Taoist Lord at the end, Taoist Tiger, who had drunk a few glasses of wine, started bawling. When I was a tiger cub in Nanshan, I almost lost my life in the mouth of a ferocious beast. It was Master who saved me, raised me, taught me Taoism, and helped me refine my hyoid bone and condense a human form. I didn't even have time to repay him before he left me. Heaven, why are you so heartless? Having said that, he gulped down another bowl of wine. Chapter 580. Lin Jin told him about Taoist Tiger from Taoist Lord's heavenly scroll. It was all from Taoist Lord's heart. Hearing it from Lin Jin's mouth, Taoist Tiger's eyes brimmed with tears. Lin Jin's words didn't seem fake. To put it simply, a man and a monster had gotten to know each other through a fight. After getting to know each other, they found out that they were on the same wavelength. With Taoist Lord as a medium, they also had a common enemy. The one who hurt me back then was Taoist Corpse. Taoist Tiger revealed the truth. Upon hearing this, Lin Jin realized how vicious Taoist Corpse was. Just by thinking about it, he knew that Taoist Corpse was most likely planning to refine Taoist Tiger into a zombie tiger for him to command. Fortunately, Taoist Tiger was quite capable. Even if he was ambushed, he could still severely injure his opponent and escape. Also, because he was afraid of being found by corpse cultivators, Tiger Cultivator had been extremely low-key in the past hundreds of years. Even the number of times he left the cave was pitifully few. Therefore, most people in the Liang province had heard of the Black Wind Cave Master. Tiger Cultivator, these three words, had long been forgotten. Since they had become sworn brothers, Lin Jin had no plans to feed the monsters in Black Wind Cave with monster-sealing pills. Firstly, it wasn't necessary. With Taoist Tiger restraining them, the monsters wouldn't dare to resist. Secondly, monster-sealing pills were extremely precious. The feed mill had limited materials, so it was better to save as much as possible. Right, Brother Tiger, how much do you know about Liangzhou's water god cult? After chatting for so long, Lin Jin took a sip of wine before getting back to the topic at hand. Lin Jin was definitely going to mount 5 palms to retrieve the 4 Seas Freedom Gourd. Taoist Tiger had been hiding in Black Wind Cave for centuries, so he should know a thing or two about water god cult. Sure enough, Taoist Tiger scowled in disdain at Lin Jin's question. The water god cult, humph, just a bunch of rabble. Around the time I came to Liangzhou to hide, some mutants from the Western Prefecture came to preach, but this has nothing to do with me. Back then, their stupid cult master came to deal with me and wanted to establish his power. In the end, I bit off one of his arms and he fled in panic. Later, if it wasn't because I didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble, they would have already been destroyed. Later on, they learned their lesson and even sent me gifts, so I didn't bother with them. This was Lin Jin's first time hearing about this. Clearly, with Taoist whose temperament, he would definitely not say anything. In other words, it was true. If that was the case, then the Water God sect was only SOSO. Their strength might even be inferior to the Black Wind Cave. If that was the case, things would be much easier. However, Lin Jin had always been cautious. No matter what, Water God cult had been operating in Liangzhou for hundreds of years, so they must have a solid foundation. Lin Jin wasn't afraid even when he was alone. Now that he had Black Wind Cave support, he had even less to fear. After giving it some thought, Lin Jin said, "Back then, your master, Taoist Lord, left behind an artifact at Mount 5 Palms in Liangzhou. I'm here to retrieve that artifact. Can you lend me a hand, Brother Tiger?" Master's magic treasure? Taoist Tiger's eyes lit up. He hurriedly nodded, since the items left behind by the honored master are recorded in the heavenly book, only the inheritor can take them. Brother Lin, since your honored master can read the heavenly book, he is the inheritor that my honored master mentioned. It's not a problem for you to take it, I will naturally do my best to help. Lin Jin nodded, musing that it was done. With the help of an expert like Taoist Tiger, this matter was practically in the bag. Lin Jin pondered for a moment before asking, Brother Tiger, how's your old injury? At the mention of this, Taoist Tiger's expression darkened. Don't mention it. I don't know what method that corpse Tao used to injure me back then. For the past few centuries, I've tried everything I could but to no avail. Instead, my injury worsened and now I can barely suppress it anymore. Lin Jin nodded. In fact, when he accidentally touched Taoist Tiger earlier, he had already recorded him into the Museum of Deadly Beasts. So, Lin Jin knew Taoist Tiger's injury like the back of his hand. As the Taoist Lord's disciple, Taoist Tiger knew a thing or two about beast appraising and diagnosis, but even so, he still couldn't recover after so many years. Just from this alone, one could tell how unique his injury was. However, no matter how unique it was, the museum had already provided him with a cure. Brother Tiger, if you don't mind, let me take a look at you. Lin Jin volunteered. Now that he and Taoist Tiger were allies, they could work together to deal with Corpse Tao and the Demonic Appraisal Association in the future. Hence, treating Taoist Tiger was beneficial to Lin Jin. Haha, what's there to mind? Brother Lin, feel free to take a look if you want. Taoist Tiger laughed heartily. As he spoke, he tore off his shirt, revealing his muscular upper body. On Taoist Tiger's back was a wound about 2 feet long. Strangely, this wound was difficult to heal. Although it was still stained with blood, the flesh around the wound had turned black, similar to the skin color of the zombie Lin Jin had seen. Anyone who didn't know anything about this strange wound would be at a loss for what to do, let alone treat it. But Lin Jin knew the details of this wound. It was just an ordinary wound. The reason why it couldn't heal even after hundreds of years was because of the corpse energy on it. And this wasn't just any corpse energy. According to the museum, this corpse energy was known as immortal corroding corpse energy. If a regular person were to come in contact with even a hint of it, they would be instantly killed by the corpse energy and refined into a zombie. Even a powerful expert would meet a tragic end if they came in contact with it. Taoist Tiger was the disciple of the Tao Lord, one of the 6 beastmen. His strength was already extraordinary hundreds of years ago, but even he had been tortured by this corpse aura for hundreds of years. Let alone dispel it, the corpse aura was about to invade his internal organs. It could be said that he was in a very dangerous situation. It wasn't that Lin Jin was boasting, but even an immortal might not be able to save Taoist Tiger. Without the Museum of Deadly Beasts, Lin Jin wouldn't be able to do anything. Forget a rank 4 beast appraiser, even a rank 5 or 6 beast appraiser wouldn't be able to save him. Moreover, as far as Lin Jin knew, there were no rank 6 beast appraisers in this world. If there were, Lin Jin believed Xu Xiaolu was qualified to be promoted to rank 6. Returning to the wound on Taoist Tiger's back, the wound wasn't the problem. The problem was the corpse. The key was how to get rid of it. The Museum of Deadly Beasts had several methods of treatment. In Lin Jin's opinion, there were only 2 possible methods. One was to use the body refining needle to force the corpse energy out of his body. But if that was the case, the corpse energy that was forced out of his body would become a huge problem. Anyone who came in contact with it would be refined into a zombie, including himself. Even if they managed to avoid it, the corpse energy would spread and corrode the surroundings, turning the area into a land of death. If the corpse energy were to spread, it would be even more troublesome. The other method was riskier, but to Lin Jin it would solve the problem once and for all. This method was to fight poison with poison. Normal creatures, be it humans or monsters, couldn't coexist with corpse energy, let alone suppress it. Conversely, it was more likely that they would be suppressed by the corpse energy. But what if it was a zombie who suppressed the corpse energy? This was what it meant to fight poison with poison. Coincidentally, there was a powerful zombie sealed inside Xu Xiaolu's painting. Chapter 581. Of course, this method came with a huge risk. After all, the headless zombie was so powerful that even Lin Jin and Xu Xiaolu together couldn't defeat it. They could only use the power of the demon sealing sword to seal it inside the painting world. If something were to go wrong this time, it would be a big joke. Hence, Lin Jin fell into deep thought as he pondered over the details of this plan. Either he didn't do it or he did it to perfection. He couldn't afford to make even the slightest mistake. Seeing Lin Jin in deep thought, Taoist who assumed that his injury was too troublesome for Lin Jin to handle, so he said nonchalantly, "Brother Lin, it's fine even if I can't cure it. Don't let this worry you. I've endured it for so many years, so it doesn't matter if I keep enduring it. I can handle it." Lin Jin shook his head with a smile. "Brother Tiger, you're mistaken. Your injury can be cured. I was just thinking about the details of the treatment." Taoist who was stunned at this before jumping up in shock. "Brother Lin, do you really have a way to cure it?" Lin Jin nodded. This time, Taoist who was truly excited. Others might not know, but he had been living a life worse than death for the past several hundred years. The wound on his back could not be healed no matter what he did, and the corpse aura on it was constantly corroding him. At this rate, he would die in a dozen years at most. How could Taoist who not be anxious? Hence, upon hearing that Lin Jin really had a way to cure him, Taoist who was the most excited and expectant. Lin Jin had been thinking about this for the entire night. After all, this was a serious matter and he couldn't afford to be careless. For example, could the headless zombie suppress the immortal corroding corpse energy? If one side was defeated, the headless zombie might become stronger, or the immortal corroding corpse energy might turn around and take control of the headless zombie. Either outcome wasn't a good thing for Lin Jin. It was best if these two factors reached a balance. Of course, this was difficult. But even if there was an imbalance, Lin Jin hoped that the headless zombie could suppress the immortal corroding corpse energy because he could use the demon sealing sword to seal the headless zombie. After making up his mind, Lin Jin went to Xu Xiaolu for a discussion. However, Liangzhou was too far away from Tianxian Royal City. Even if he were to travel on a cloud, he wouldn't be able to make it in time. Fortunately, Lin Jin brought one of Xu Xiaolu's paintings with him. It was the Peach Blossom House. This was personally drawn by Xu Xiaolu, and it had already formed a boundary. With Cosmos ink, Lin Jin could teleport inside. He explained everything to Taoist who, and the latter had no objections. In one sentence, as long as he could cure his chronic illness, he would be willing to climb a mountain of blades or plunge into a sea of flames. Lin Jin took out the painting and arranged it properly. Then, he used universe ink and pointed at Taoist who. The latter instantly turned into a stream of light and was sucked into the painting. Lin Jin also entered the painting world. At the same time, far away in the Tianxian Royal City, the little book pavilion sensed something and immediately stood up. "Bastard, you finally remembered me." After mumbling to himself, Xu Xiaolu smiled again. Then, he tidied up his clothes and hurriedly entered the painting world. There was also a Peach Blossom House in the painting realm, and it was exactly the same as the one in the academy. However, the painting realm lacked a sense of realism. Lin Jin and Taoist who had been waiting for a while now. Suddenly, the door to the Peach Blossom House was pushed open and a woman in a red dress appeared. Lin Jin quickly went up to her. Xu Xiaolu was all smiles at first, but when she saw Taoist who following behind Lin Jin, she was stunned. Then, she straightened her expression and looked at Lin Jin suspiciously. She seemed to be asking, "What's going on?" Lin Jin explained the situation and explained the situation. Xu Xiaolu's expression turned grim. The last time she and Lin Jin teamed up against that zombie, they had to give it their all and only barely managed to seal its headless body. If there was even the slightest mishap in this plan, the headless zombie might be released and there would be no end of trouble. However, Xu Xiaolu knew that Lin Jin had always been a dependable person. If he wasn't confident, he wouldn't have made this decision. After all, Lin Jin knew how terrifying the headless zombie was. After some discussion, Lin Jin and Xu Xiaolu decided to give it a try. There were many layers to the painting realm, and the one that sealed the headless zombie was the most secretive one. Only Xu Xiaolu could enter. With a wave of Xu Xiaolu's sleeve, Lin Jin and Daoist, who only saw a flash of light before they were deep within the painting realm. This place was completely different from the sunny day before. The light here was dim and dark clouds loomed overhead, making it hard to breathe. Below them, the mountains and rivers had been tainted by layers of death aura. It looked incredibly strange, as if someone had splashed a blob of ink on a painting. At the center of the darkness was a headless corpse that had been pierced through by a sword, nailed to the ground. That headless corpse looked terrifying with a pair of eyes protruding from its breasts and its abdomen split open like a mouth. Its flesh was purplish-green in color and was incredibly tough. Isn't that the corpse?" Daoist, who stared at it for a moment before exclaiming in surprise. Lin Jin was shocked. He asked for more details and Daoist, who nodded in confirmation. "There's no mistake. The corpse has a gathering talisman on it. Although it doesn't have a head, this alone is enough to confirm it." Chapter 582. After a moment of contemplation, Taoist, who said, "Brother Lin, this is too dangerous. Why don't we just give up? The immortal devouring energy has been with me for hundreds of years. At most, I can still take it." Lin Jin shook his head. "Brother Tiger, you should know better than anyone that you're already at the end of your rope. If this goes on, you'll be turned into a zombie by the immortal devouring energy in a few years. That would be even more troublesome." This was true, and Taoist, who knew it too. Hence, after some thought, he didn't say anything else. In fact, Lin Jin had another worry. He was worried that Taoist corpse would come after noticing the immortal devouring energy. Who knew what would happen then? Hence, if he could resolve this problem as soon as possible, he shouldn't drag it out. Many things that were difficult to clean up in the end were usually dragged out. However, Lin Jin still had to think about how to proceed. Lin Jin had experienced the ferocity of the headless zombie, and the immortal devouring energy wasn't simple either. After staying in Taoist, whose body for hundreds of years, it had developed some sentience. Lin Jin was worried that if he forced the immortal devouring energy out, the headless zombie and the immortal devouring energy wouldn't clash. If that happened, the balance Lin Jin envisioned wouldn't be achieved. Hence, he had to lure it into a fight. How? That was the key. Suddenly, Lin Jin turned to Taoist, and an idea came to him. The immortal devouring energy had been pestering Taoist, for hundreds of years with the goal of refining him. This was the key to the immortal devouring energy gaining sentience. It was also a form of obsession. The more impossible it was to achieve, the stronger this obsession became. This was why the immortal devouring energy was so difficult to deal with. Even with Taoist, whose strength, he couldn't do anything about it and was on the verge of defeat. If the headless zombie's corpse were to be contaminated by Taoist, the immortal devouring energy would surely retaliate. With that in mind, Lin Jin acted immediately. He first had Xu Xiaolu stabilize this layer of the painting realm, and then he flew down with Daoist to observe the headless zombie from a close distance. That required even more courage. Even with the demon sealing sword suppression, the aura of death here was still thick. The ground had been completely corroded, forming a black substance that resembled pitch that was slowly spreading. At this, Lin Jin couldn't help but feel sorry for Xu Xiaolu. The painting realm could be considered the foundation of the little book building, and even though the headless zombie was sealed, it was still corroding everything around it. The corroding painting realm could also be considered as the corroding book pavilion. This was like a thorn in his heart. Even if it wouldn't affect him much in the short term, a thorn was still a thorn. It wouldn't disappear just because it was small. Lin Jin had no idea what this feeling was, but he knew it wasn't pleasant. It was for this reason that Lin Jin decided to take the risk. Based on his calculations, the immortal corroding energy could greatly suppress the headless zombie. This way, the headless zombie's corrosion would also stop under the suppression of the immortal eroding corpse Qi and the demon sealing sword, and even shrink. There was one more thing. Only under these circumstances would Lin Jin have a chance to approach the headless zombie. Then, Lin Jin planned to feed a monster sealing pill into the creature's mouth. This was all Lin Jin's brainwave. The headless zombie was a corpse that had gained sentience, so from a certain perspective, it could be considered a zombie monster. Since that was the case, feeding it the monster sealing pill might produce an unexpected effect. Even if it didn't work, it didn't matter. He wouldn't lose anything by giving it a try. At most, he would just lose some monster sealing pills. In any case, Lin Jin had prepared quite a lot to deal with the monsters in Black Wind Cave. Due to Taoist Hu, he had saved up on them, and now they came in handy. At such a close distance, Lin Jin could see that the headless zombie was quite sturdy. Even without a head, it was still much taller than Lin Jin. The demon sealing sword pierced through its body. The headless zombie was now hunched over and motionless, but that dangerous aura still remained. "Brother Tiger, stay here and don't move. No matter what happens, you can only run if I tell you to. Otherwise, don't do anything reckless," Lin Jin reminded again. Taoist Hu laughed. "Don't worry, Brother Lin. Just do whatever you want to do." Lin Jin nodded. Taoist Hu was powerful. Even if he hadn't improved after centuries of resisting the zombie energy, he was still ridiculously strong. His steel-like body was able to withstand the corrosion of death's aura far more than an average person. This was also where Lin Jin's confidence in choosing this method came from. Had it been anyone else, Lin Jin wouldn't have dared to do this. "Alright, let's begin. Brother Tiger, go over and grab this headless zombie's hand," Lin Jin said, but Taoist Hu was clearly stunned. "Grab the zombie's hand?" Taoist Hu glanced at the headless zombie's hand, his scalp tingling. Seeing Lin Jin nod, Taoist Hu recalled his boast earlier and gritted his teeth. He had no choice but to bite the bullet. As he got closer, Taoist Hu steeled his heart and reached out to grab the zombie's hand. In an instant, the motionless zombie seemed to come to life. The large eyes on its nipples abruptly opened and its purplish-green hand reached out to grab Taoist Hu's wrist. Such strength! Taoist Hu was shocked. But he wasn't one to be trifled with. Enraged, he began to wrestle with the headless zombie. If Taoist Hu didn't use his strength, his arm would be ripped off by the headless zombie. This was considered a hand-to-hand fight. Perhaps only someone of Taoist Hu's caliber could go toe-to-toe with a creature as ferocious as the headless zombie. Meanwhile, Lin Jin retreated to a distance of 10 feet away to observe. Taoist Hu's muscles were bulging and his body had doubled in size, revealing his ferocious tiger form. In terms of strength, he was now stronger than the headless zombie. He was indeed ferocious. But just then, a cloud of death energy surged out of the headless zombie's hand. Knowing this was the moment, Lin Jin immediately invoked a spell and shot out a dozen needles into Taoist Hu's body. Lin Jin wanted to force out the immortal corroding and refined corpse energy. In fact, if Lin Jin were to force it, the immortal corroding and refined corpse energy would automatically fight against the headless zombie's corpse energy, and the battlefield would be Taoist Hu's arm. Now Taoist, who was in excruciating pain. He gritted his teeth and was drenched in sweat. Lin Jin continued with his needles. This time, Lin Jin exerted his full strength, forcing the two types of corpse energy out of Taoist, whose body and into the headless zombie's body. Once there was nothing left of the corpse energy, Lin Jin shouted, "Run!" Taoist, who had been waiting for this. He immediately struggled free and retreated 1,000 feet away before collapsing to the ground, panting heavily. Taoist, whose arm was riddled with wounds, caused by the two types of corpse energy fighting each other. However, Lin Jin could tell that Taoist who was fine now. These external injuries were nothing to Lin Jin. Even the wound on Taoist, whose back was healing under his powerful healing powers. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.